my objection.
No, no, bruh. Everything you just said is entirely irrelevant. It was obfuscation, and you know that. And that's because you really don't have an answer. You realize that, yeah, you're right. I just contradicted myself, right? Like you can't claim that Michelson-Morley isn't able to detect orbital motion because motion is relative, and because we're in the reference frame of the Earth, we don't detect that motion. Therefore, the interferometer isn't making the fringe shift measurements relative to the orbital speed, right? That's the entire argument. It's like we, in very
Wait,
simple
wait a minute.
terms,
Hold on. MMX was looking for the motion through the ether and
yeah.
didn't find it. So
Yeah.
so what? There's no ether.
Okay. Wait. Wait. We're actually talking about how there was a measurement, and the side of your side's answer is not just there was no ether. Your side's answer was okay. There can't be an ether, and the motion has to be relative, and there had to be length contraction, and there had to be time dilation. You have to make all those claims. You don't get to just say there was no ether.
There was no ether. That was the definition or the conclusion of Michelson-Morley.
No,
The
no,
errors,
no, no.
the errors were not anywhere near what would be expected for length contraction.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, Xander, do you agree that your side's explanation is not simply there is no ether and that it actually required the explanation of relativity?
Did
Not
it?
for Michelson-Morley. That
Didn't.
relativity came after Michelson-Morley.
Correct.
Yeah, duh, because it was a response to it. So
Okay. So
okay, so that's my point. It's like
no,
when
it's
you
not
guys
your
like to
point.
you guys like to just say, "Oh, it just meant there was no ether," as if that just solves the problem. Like you present it as though people thought there was an ether, then we did
People thought there was an
Michelson-Morley,
ether.
and then we did Michelson-Morley, and it proved there was no ether. Case
Correct.
closed. That's not what
Yes.
happened.
Case closed.
No,
Boom.
no, no, no. That's not what happened.
That's what
People
happened.
thought there was an ether. We did Michelson-Morley. We didn't detect the orbital motion fringe shift, and then as a response to that, they said, "Okay, we have to throw away the ether, and then." We have to propose an explanation as to why that motion
That was
isn't
not.
being detected.
That was not Michelson-Morley. Michelson-Morley showed there was no ether. The rest of it came
And
later.
no, no, no. Let me just
You're
quote
so
Einstein
wrong.
a few times here. Yeah, it's like he
Have you read the
said, "In my
Michelson-Morley paper?
younger years, yes." And I
No,
know
you
what the
haven't. No,
title
you
of it
haven't. You
is
haven't
too.
interpreted it.
What's the
What's the
title of
title?
the
Yes,
paper?
all of it.
Tell us the title.
No, you tell me. You tell
No,
me.
you claim you know the title. Tell me. I don't know it
You
off the top of my
asked
head.
me if I read it. I'm
So he
asking
only
you, do
You
read
you
think I
the
know
know
the
the
title.
title off
title?
my? You think I know the title of the Michelson-Morley paper off the top of my head?
So you
Yeah, you know
don't
it because
know.
it goes along with what you just said. So that's why you think
Okay.
that was the conclusion.
Yeah, the title is On the Relative Motion of the Earth and the Luminiferous Ether.
Thank you. And that's what they were trying to prove.
On
And
can
show
you
there
repeat it?
was no.
What's the
He did
title?
exactly
What's
what
the
I said he
title?
was doing.
Yeah, what's the title?
You just said it was on the motion of the relative of the Earth and the ether, right?
Oh, so
I don't
it's
know the title
it's
off the top of my head, but
on the relative motion of Earth and the ether. Okay,
right.
so if we
If
don't
I'm
get the
no if
result that
I'm
we
no motion,
predicted, let's just think about this
if I'm
very
no motion through the
logically.
ether, there is no ether.
Let's think about this very logically, right? On the relative motion of Earth and ether. Okay, we don't get the result we expect. Okay, so therefore, the motion of Earth and the ether now have to be addressed. They both have to be addressed because
There's
the
no ether.
result didn't match it. Okay,
Yeah,
so step
there
one
was
for
no
your
ether.
side is to religiously throw out the ether.
Correct.
And then,
They found no ether.
yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
religiously
Welcome.
assumed there was no ether. And
Not
then,
religiously. Not no.
oh,
Excuse me. No religion involved. Scientific theory. Scientific
no,
experiment.
no,
No
no,
ether.
No,
we're about to get
actually
into the
not,
religion.
Chip.
Yeah.
You know,
No
we're about to
ether.
get into the religion part of it because, like, if you
No.
make
No religion.
claims,
No religion involved. This is
okay,
a scientific experiment.
do you agree that this is a decent definition of religion, a belief system
We're
built
not talking about
upon the
religion. We're
doctrine?
talking about
Wait,
science.
is it? But you're contending that it's religious in nature. So, like, is this a decent definition here? Like a belief system built upon the doctrine of men that requires blind faith.
Yeah. And there's no faith in science. It's
But
all
right,
experiment.
Wow.
right.
Wow.
Agreed, agreed. Okay, so here is an example of where they did that, right? What they said. masquerading as science, right? Is that
Masquerading.
here's your new doctrine. There's a man named
Here's a
Einstein.
new man-made doctrine, right, that we proved with scientific theory, right? Thank you.
So man-made doctrine, relativity, Einstein. Okay,
No
and it's a
relativity. Excuse
system
me.
of
Relativity does not.
beliefs.
Excuse me. No relativity in Michelson-Morley. Relativity comes after.
I know that. So
Okay, then why did
system
you
of
say relativity?
beliefs, system because it was a response to Michelson-Morley.
Oh,
Duh.
okay, but
Are you serious, Joe?
in the meantime,
Okay,
Michelson-Morley was before relativity. So
Yeah, and they
duh.
didn't know how to explain it, idiot. Like
yeah,
what?
So
they knew how to explain it. There's no
come on,
ether.
okay, so system of beliefs that require blind faith, right? So what the
Blind
claim
faith
ended up
involved.
being in very simple terms, right, is if the Earth were moving, then one light beam would have had to travel further than the other one, right? Which would mean that when they got back to the destination, one would be a little bit behind the other one because the light beams are going the same speed, but one's running further. Like if we both ran a 4.540, but I had to run 60 yards, right? I'm gonna get there after you. I'm gonna get to the destination after you. So if we had a zigzag a certain way where we met at the same place, but my zigzag was 20 yards longer, I would get there. It'd be more like 43 yards or whatever, right? I would get there a second after you, right?
Yep,
Okay,
that was not
that's what
noticed.
was supposed to happen. Yeah, and
Yep,
it did
that didn't
happen.
happen.
It did
Didn't happen.
happen. Wait,
Didn't
time out.
happen.
It did
Didn't
happen.
happen.
It just was very, very, very small.
Right,
Okay,
because their
it was,
instrument wasn't that
it was,
good.
it was.
This was 1880s. This
Time
was
out,
the
time
sign.
out.
Oh my
This
god.
was
To
1880s.
clarify, no, it was no. When it was replicated,
1880s.
when it was replicated by Elias, it was able to detect as sensitive as 1/100,000th of a wavelength.
Yeah, it was way more sensitive than it had to be, Shill. You got to reread this, man.
1880.
I want to say that they said it was even MMX's version was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be, and
And
the
they didn't
result was
find it.
one
Thank you.
sixth. Can we do basic math here? It was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be, and the result detected was
And
one
they
sixth the
still
predicted
didn't find
value.
it, did
So
they?
would that be in the error margin?
Yes, that was the error margin.
No,
The
it
3
wouldn't.
kilometer.
No, it
Michelson
wouldn't.
Morley 4 to
Holy
8
shit.
kilometers per second was within the error margin.
Okay, can I ask you a question again? Okay. If the device was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be,
Right,
and
because they're
it
expecting
detected
33. Weren't they
and it
expecting like
why are
33
you interrupting the
kilometers
math
per
question? I
second?
thought you loved math.
Didn't they expect like 33 kilometers per second?
Oh wait, I thought
And they
you
found
were
and
I
they
thought
only found 4 to 8, which was the error in the instrument.
4 to 8 is way too
Only?
wide of a range.
Yeah, they were expecting 30
I
kilometers a
think he
second.
said 48.
4
4
to
to
8.
8, not 48. 4 to 8
My bad.
Okay.
is
If
basically
the
a null result. But Witsit saying that they got something, and he's focusing on that, which I don't blame him. But he's saying what's causing that, and that's what the argument is about. What's
The error in the
causing that?
instrument.
Yeah,
Because again,
he wants to know
they've
what
done it over
caused
and over again. Wilson, Cleveland, Milson, Thomas F. Kennedy, Michelson did it again. Then they switched to a different, slightly different test. And now they're down to the difference in the two beams being 10 to the minus 18. Come on. So
okay,
I
so
don't
can I ask you a
understand what the
question
problem
now
is.
without you freaking out?
Well, no, the thing about it is they've done this experiment over and over and over again. The latest one, Nagel et al. In
You just
2015.
said this, Chill. Chill.
Well, I mean, so what? I mean, Witsit obviously isn't hearing this because I've said this more than once, and his answer is, "Poof, we're going to ignore all this, and we're going to concentrate on the error in the instrument and Michelson-Morley, which was 1880. We'll ignore the 2015 data and concentrate on the 1880 data." Okay, let's go. Concentrate on the 1880 data. Go.
Okay, check this out. If the device is 10 times more sensitive than it's needed to be to detect the measurement, and then the measurement detected is 1/6 the predicted value. That is not under the error margin. Okay, that is very simple math. Do I need to explain the
So
math?
you so you say that the error in the instrument was 1/10. Where's that in the data? Do you have that in the
It's one
instrument
sixth. It's in the paper.
in the paper? Where does it say that in the paper? Show me
Look
exactly.
it up. Look it up. Look it up. 1/6. Okay.
Chill,
So
you said
anyway,
it yourself, dude.
the right.
31 and then 4.8 or whatever you said, 4 to 6.
4 to 8. In the meantime, so it was it 30 or was it 4? Which is
It was
closer to
1
zero?
6.
So which
Oh,
is closer to
closer. Oh,
zero?
wait. Did we
30
just
or
revert
4?
to? Wait, did we just actually go that far down where we're saying which one's closer to
Yeah, which
zero
one's closer to
and
0?
equating that to error margin?
Yeah, that's error margin. Right?
Okay,
So
let me ask you a simple question.
did they find 30 or did they find 4
And let me
or
ask you a
6?
question.
Whatever.
If the error
What did they
margin of
find
an
with it? What's it? They were expecting
they
30.
found like
What did they
they found
find?
like
How much?
they I actually don't remember the exact number,
Yeah,
but it's not
was it
4 to 8.
30?
But
It was close
no.
to 30
No, it
kilometers per.
wasn't 30, right. It was
Okay,
closer
now
to
listen,
0.
here's my question. If the error margin of an instrument was 0.00000001,
Was
and
it?
then what you detected was 5,
Was
would
it?
that would that measurement be inside the error margin?
Was it
Yes.
that precise?
Did you just
He's
say
gi
yes?
he's giving a hypothetical. Let him just play his game, NASA, because I think it's
I'm not
If
playing
a
hypotheticals with Witsit. I'm sorry.
device's
Listen, if you want
error
to play
margin
hypotheticals, you have to start off once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, a man made an instrument that did this, and then I'll play your game. But you have to start off with that.
pretend that he
okay,
said
if
yes to all of it.
No, yes, actually say it. So I got my
Chill. Who the fuck are you, dude? Shut up. Let him talk.
They
so
got
if an
5.
instrument
They got 5. It was 5 to 7.5.
yeah, there you go. I thought it was like 5, 6, 7. 6 or 7. 6, 7, right? So all right, so we got 6, 7 on the measurement. If the sensitivity is much lower than
Yes,
that, meaning that
wasn't.
the instrument is capable of measuring much lower than that, then would the 6 to 7 measurement be within the error margin?
Was it 30 or was it 6 or 7? They were expecting 30.
It was between 5 and 7. He just said
Yeah,
that.
which is like, that's not 30, right?
No, which is why it was classified as a null result.
Correct.
Because
But
it was
that
And then
doesn't.
guess what?
error margin.
Do
Then they
you
come
guys
back.
understand?
They come
You,
back and
you
redo the
you're
experiment
interrupting
time
me
and
again.
time again. They come back and do the experiment and get closer and closer and closer to
Keep
0.
You've already
And
in
made that
wonder
point,
why.
and I've
Why?
already
Why do they get
refuted that
closer to
point.
0?
and keep in
Why
mind
do they
the
keep getting
error.
why do they keep getting closer to 0 when they do the experiment with better and better instruments if
Why
it's
don't you
not
ask him
actually
what the
0?
error is due to, NASA? Ask him what the error is due to, because we have some answers for that. And I don't think he's
No, no,
addressing
no.
It's
We're
that.
not
5
gonna
minutes.
skip over
It's
what I'm
5
saying.
minutes of
You guys are
midnight.
doing this
I'm
It's
not
little
an
getting
like
to
important
it.
tag
point.
team
It's
thing
5
where
minutes of
NASA
midnight. I'm
just
not
like
getting into it.
incessantly interrupts to center the point, and then you jump in on the end of him and then try to change the subject
It's
No,
by
5
no.
minutes. It's
effectively
5 minutes of midnight.
eliminating my point. It's not. I'm
I'm
not
not
doing
getting
that.
to
That's
There's
I'm
a
stupid.
not
reason
getting to
there's
the
an
topic.
error. There's a reason there's an error. That's all I was saying. And you acknowledge that as well.
Yeah. But before that, we got to establish basic facts here. I don't know why this is like 8 years in and we're still getting it wrong.
Because you're
Do
talking
you guys
about a
agree that a
130-year-old
null
experiment.
result that means even stronger point that you should be able to understand it?
We do, and we've
So
redone the experiment
it
over
doesn't
and
seem you do
over
because you
and
keep
over
claiming it
again
was in
with
the error
better
margin.
and better equipment and get less and less error to now we're down
That
to
isn't
10,
true
1 times
though.
10 to the minus 18.
Actually, there was a test done with Air Force grade equipment in 1987, and it showed a result almost exactly the same as what they got in
We don't have that experiment.
MMX. Do what?
It all in 1973 was 2.5 centimeters per second. And then the next one was Wolf et al. 2003, which they went to a
And
slightly
that's
different
convenient
experiment.
that your
It's
list
10
omits the
times
one
to the
done by
minus
the Air
15.
Force. That's convenient. Your one omits
It's
the one
convenient
from
that
the
you
Air
pick
Force.
out with the one that doesn't that's the
Well, no, see,
outlier in the data.
unlike you,
From
I'm
from
not cherry
1955, there was
picking.
3 kilometers per second, then 30 meters per second in 1958, 2 centimeters
Mm,
per second in 1968,
mm, mm.
7 then
Can I
2.5
ask you a
centimeters
serious
per
question?
second.
Like,
So
like
then so
you're
then they switch to slightly different
definitely.
equipment, and they get to 10 to the minus 15
Mhm,
difference, 10
mhm.
to the minus 16 difference, 10 to the minus 17 difference, and the latest one, 10 to the minus 18 difference from
Okay,
the
man.
speed of light
So I
between
could
the
have
2
heard someone talk about
units.
how I was supposedly interrupting, and now
Yeah,
You only
bro.
got 3 more minutes, Witsit. I gotta get it in before I go to before I
yeah,
let you
man.
guys
Okay, so I'm curious about the psychology of it, but I'll kind of leave that to the side. Like where you know that you're stifling the conclusion. So like, are you actually subconsciously scared of the conclusion and not confident in your ability to truly defend your position? And I think that
Oh
is
no, I'm
actually the
just
obvious
laughing
answer.
at. I'm laughing at the fact that you concentrate on a 130-year-old experiment and ignore data
You've said that
from
7
10 years.
times, so it's
I
certainly
know,
not
but you
worthy of
continue to do it.
interruption, right?
You
So
continue to freaking
for
do
the
it.
room here,
For the
right? Like
room here,
I have this meter,
Witsit
right?
concentrates.
Meter,
Witsit
this is
concentrates
my
on
patience meter. Wait, time out, stop. This is my patience meter, right? And what happens is it slowly builds up. And you guys, this is a perfect example of how I've repeatedly given into the interruption, right? And allowed. So what ends up happening is I'm not going to yell over them or anything. So I'm going to start talking super fast because it's the only way for me to get my point
Yeah,
in.
dude,
So,
walk as fast as you did on Alex Jones that one time. That
When
was
you
so
talk super
impressive.
fast, you just talk
if I
super
have like
bullshit.
7 seconds, right, but I have to make a 20-second point, I have to like 2.5x it. So then people were like, "Oh, you're just talking fast." Try to no, I just to actually say the point. Like I'm just gonna say the point real fast. But this is like a really simple point, right? Like you guys are conflating null result with error margin. That is incorrect. So can we just kind of fix that? Can we polish that up a little bit and move forward? And 7 years in, a null result's not synonymous with error margin, meaning they predicted 30 kilometers. If they had gotten 27 kilometers, they would have called it a null result. Do you understand that? Do you understand that
Only if the
based
error
on
margin
their
is 3 or more.
proposed causal mechanism in the test, you have a hypothesis and a null hypothesis, right? So if they're proposing a certain cause of the effect, and if that cause truly was the cause, that would mean it's going to give us this effect. So if we then go measure and we get a different effect, we cannot claim that our cause and our understanding of the cause was correct. So one thing we know is that it wasn't correct. That is a null result. It could have literally been 33 and it would have been a null result. It could have been 27 and it would have been a null result. That doesn't mean that it was an error or that it was no longer a measurement. Those are two completely different things. Do you guys understand that? That even if the
Oh, yeah, but
measurement
they
was
didn't get 30, did
above the
they?
predicted value, do you understand that
They
if the
didn't get
measurement
30,
was
did
above
they?
the
Witsit.
predicted value, it
No,
would still
Witsit.
be
They didn't get
classified
30,
as
did
null
they?
result?
Witsit. Did they get 30?
No, but I need to know that you
They got.
understand this
They
basic
got 4.
elementary
They got
concept.
6. They got like a whole shitload less than they expected. Not just a little bit
Yeah,
less.
but
A shitload less.
but
So you
if
didn't understand his point
hypothetically,
there.
like
I do
hypothetically, if
understand his
they got,
point. His point, but
oh my
he's
gosh.
ignoring the fact that they didn't get what he said they got. He's
Hey, NASA,
supposing now. He's
NASA,
supposing
how
now,
would
saying,
you
"Oh, if they
feel?
got 30, then they would have said they got a null
NASA,
result." No, probably not.
How would you feel if you didn't eat any food yesterday?
How would you feel if you like actually listened for a change and actually, took what you're using 130-year-old data and you don't understand
Holy
130-year-old
shit.
data, therefore you ignore everything else that's
Okay,
done
hey,
in the previous
Chill, this is
in the
embarrassing.
130 years
can you chill,
obsolete
bro?
now.
NASA, do
My
you normally
God,
eat
Maybe
breakfast?
I can
I'm
jump
just
in.
genuinely curious. Do you eat breakfast normally?
what does that got to do with shit? What's it?
Just answer my question, man.
What the fuck does that got to do with shit? What's it?
It's just like,
Why don't
how do
you
you
just
not
like
know?
He's
why don't you
No.
just
accusing you
throw
of
shit
not being
against
able
the
to
screen for a
today.
while?
The question is like, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast yesterday?
I have no idea what this has to do with this discussion. You're just throwing
It
shit
has to do
against
with the fact that you can't entertain a hypothetical. You're fucking retard.
Exactly.
I don't play pretend games with flat earthers unless you start up. Once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, there was a man who did
Okay.
Oh,
something.
cool. So
And I
stop
want to
talking.
hypothetical.
All right,
Stop
NASA, this
talking.
is
Just
an
quit trying to talk.
age. It's an age old example, right? Which is like if you ask somebody how would they feel if they didn't eat breakfast yesterday, and they say, "Well, I don't know. I did eat breakfast." And it just shows like a basic inability to reason hypotheticals. And if you can't do that, you can't even properly examine the alternative position. So you literally don't even have a claim. Like you can't even like claim your position's correct because you've yet to even understand, comprehend, and reason through the alternative position. Okay, so
The
if you can't
alternative position is nuh-uh,
hypothetically,
with it. All you've got is nuh-uh. I'm
okay,
Oh
sorry, but
my
nuh-uh
god.
doesn't hack
so,
it.
so
My god.
So
This
I'm gonna
isn't
give you an
real.
example. I'm gonna give you an example, Nas. Okay, if hypothetically,
Projecting.
if hypothetically their measurement was 33 kilometers a second, do you agree it would still be classified as a null result?
Incorrect.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you
was
don't
their error
understand what null
margin
result
3? Like,
is.
that's a big error margin for something like
They
this. Was
didn't
their
get
error
30 though, did they?
Well,
They
see, but
got
you don't.
6.
But that's not the point right now, though.
No, that's
Like you
not the
don't.
point. That's not the point. The point is that, oh, I'm going to make up some shit. And if they got this, then they would have still done this, but only they didn't get 30. They got 6.
No,
And we've gone
the po-
back and redone the experiment. And God, now we're down to like 10 to the minus 18 or 10 to the minus 17 or whatever the hell it is. That's a lot smaller than 6 kilometers per second. They're down to like 10 to the minus 19. I think it's 19 meters per second. That's a pretty
okay.
fucking small number.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to respond, right? So you keep making the same point with the tactic as though if you just repeat the point as though it wasn't rebutted, then it just
Oh my
remains
God.
true without
You're
ever
talking this
addressing the
guy. I don't know
refutation.
anybody else who says this thing over and over and over and over again and can't
That's what
learn from there. He keeps
that's
up
what you're
bringing
doing.
It's
130-year-old.
You're
just,
doing
Well, who
it.
does that
and
with it?
and
It's
he,
his
he
coping
hasn't brought up
mechanism.
the higher accuracy of the
Yeah.
newer Mickelson-Morley tests. We also went over a little bit of what I was objecting to, or
So
responding to.
Zanick, why do you sit
Are
here
you
and
guys
watch
serious?
him
Why are you
interrupt
guys
me?
Hold on,
Stop interrupting, please.
there are ways to measure
Wesley, you're a
gravity.
troll. Thanks for exposing yourself. So I
Witsit
mean,
got Witsit got interrupted originally. NASA left, so and then I
yeah.
just muted Zanick so you could. Dude, they interrupted you completely.
Jeez.
So
And Wesley, you know that, right? You know that NASA was not letting me speak, and then Zanick used that as an opportunity to
It's
take
so
it over.
meta. It's boring.
No, because I
Then
wanted
why
to
are you
jump in.
commenting about
Oh,
interruptions
shit.
then?
You ran
Because
over
you're
me.
complaining
You went
about
on a
it.
tangent, and you wouldn't. Do you want to
No,
discuss the
you
other?
complained about it.
Yes,
Well,
because you
I'm
keep
willing to go
doing
back
it.
and forth, but you're not
Okay,
able
so
to.
you were exposed. Okay. So Zanick, can I ask my simple question, please? So do you understand that null result and error margin aren't the same thing?
Of course.
Okay, so why do you keep on saying that, like he just said, right? I said null result. He said, yeah, exactly. It was an error. Those aren't the same thing. Okay. And I explained
Understood.
what it really is. Okay, cool. So Mickelson Morley wasn't an error margin. That wasn't the conclusion of the test, right? It was actually far outside the instrument's error margin. Okay. It was a
Exactly.
null result because based on what they understood and predicted, it should have been 6 times what they actually got. So they're like, okay, this is a null result. Our idea, our theory wasn't right. That's what we
But
know.
okay, stop. We can go back and forth. I will go slower, and you can go slower, so we can make them more listenable. So the error margin they were looking at was in that range. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was within the accuracy of that instrument, because that instrument has fixtures and these have lengths, and if the lengths are exactly perfect, and we're talking about over 120 years ago, they weren't perfect, and that would definitely affect the fringe. If two of these bars were not exactly the same length, and the mirrors, etc., that would cause an error, and that was within the error margin. So when it was within the 4 kilometers per second that they were, saying there was error, it was in that error range, within the margin of error. They were okay with the fact that it should have been 30, and it was 4 or 5, 6, whatever. So you can acknowledge that it was much lower than it would be if it was due to the luminous ether that we're supposedly traveling through around the sun. Now, I don't want to do what you did. I'm not going to pile on. I'll just let you go, and then I'll make my
Well,
little
that's what you
point.
just did. They're complaining. Okay, so you're just trying to like obfuscate.
No,
And
I'm
yeah,
not actually.
Meta.
we know that it was less than the measurement. Okay, that isn't the point. The point is that the instrument was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be to detect the measurement predicted. The value was only 1/6 of what was predicted. It was classified as no result, but it was still outside of the error margin. After that, Elias then replicated the test with hundreds of thousands of measurements with extremely more precise and sensitive measurements and quality controls. And it even introduced all of the proposed ideas as to what caused the error. In addition to that, even your boy Einstein, who proposed relativity in response to Michelson-Morley, literally said, if the result of Elias's replicate, or not Elias did the analysis, right? But what's the guy's name? I don't remember the guy's name. I don't know. I forgot his name. Miller, Dayton
No,
Miller. So
after Dayton
Da-
Miller, though, there's even more. That was still 100 years ago.
stop trying to obfuscate from
I'm
my
not
point.
obfuscating. I'm talking with you about it, and we should be accurate. Yeah, Dayton Miller, 120 years ago, or 100 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Einstein's quote was about him, so we don't need to talk about someone else. So like Dayton Miller, right? He did the test all those times, and then Einstein himself came out and said, if Dayton Miller's results are accurate and not caused or due to some fundamental instrumental error, then my entire theory collapses like a house of cards. Okay.
But
Was
it
that
didn't.
okay? Now you say it didn't, but can we acknowledge? Do you agree that Einstein was correct in his assessment?
Well, yeah, if you take everything for what he's saying, absolutely, of course. But that's why we continue in science to do further testing. For example, the Kennedy Thorndike experiment that used a whole different set of instrumentation to be able to detect what we thought we could detect as far as ether, and it didn't. Again, it was even more accurate, well within the well under the margin of error that this 120-year-old test had shown us. And we measure. There could be gravitational. There's relativistic issues. There's all sorts of things that we could look at that could be possibly affecting this test. I know you don't like these things that are relative. Yeah, I don't like the word relativity, but velocity is relative. And you had a big argument with Jace a while back about measuring linear motion, how it's impossible, and we all agree.
Oh God, you're scattergunning.
And I gave you the examples about laser guns, how we can follow someone going 200 miles an
We're
hour.
talking about meta, and it has nothing to say when Zanick just meta scatterguns. Why are we scattergunning?
Why?
You said, "Hey, can we
can measure
points and make one point at a time so it can be right back and forth?" And then I did that, and you just did the opposite.
I
Both
know.
times.
We see how hard it is to respond when someone does what I just did to you.
I don't do that.
You act really?
No, I do. Sometimes I do put a lot of
you do a
information.
lot.
Sometimes I do put a lot of information there, but it's all about the same point. It's like
That's mine.
supportive of the same point. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even a response. Out of everything you said, you didn't respond to my
part of the same point. A more accurate test that we're talking about.
This is meta, and what sucks is, yeah, it does get meta a lot in these rooms because I have to always correct the other person just to try to have a basic back and forth that's relevant. Like, let's just get back to the point. Do you agree? You said yes, okay, and then you said a bunch of other stuff. You said yes, that you agreed Einstein's assessment was correct. Right, to reiterate it, now that it's been lost, he said that if Dayton Miller's measurements are correct, right, and it's not due to some fundamental instrumental error, then my entire theory collapses like a house of cards.
I agree with
and
you.
Another quote, he talked about it, and he says something similar to that, and he says because, and he uses the Latin phrase for experiment is king, right? Okay, so now, what that means is to keep relativity intact, and with it, the excuse, the quote unquote explanation for MMX not detecting the orbit of the Earth, right? We have to have a sufficient, provable explanation as to what the error is caused by.
Okay.
Okay, do you have one? Because no one ever proposed one that actually worked. Many people proposed different ones, such as it's a fundamental instrumental error. And they were like, okay, what does that mean, right? Because it's changing based on the periodicity of the solar motion. It's changing based on altitude. It's changing based on cardinal direction. None of these things make sense.
Okay, I agree. And that's why I brought up newer, more updated types of measurements that actually can measure a fringe shift because of the properties of how atoms fall and how gravity changes their phase. These are all things that actually happen that are not anything near part of Michelson-Morley. That, like, again, that's has been mentioned. It's very, I can't believe they even did it back then. By the way, we both could admire these people, but today we have things that are incredibly sensitive and use completely different technology, and we're still seeing fringe shift based on gravity and other things, quantum gravimeters and things. These are things that will give a fringe shift. I mean, we took huge leaps forward with the three ring laser gyro, and we're not seeing anything. Okay, I don't want to scattergun and go in a different direction.
Yeah, because your whole tactic here is just like, yeah, you're right. I don't have an explanation, so I'm just going to claim it's really old and we have better stuff. And if the audience doesn't know that actually it's not true, then it'll sound good. No, you don't. Okay, the most modern replications, even with radio interferometry, radio wave interferometry in like 2014 showed the same results. The Air Force did it in '87, showed the same results. What you're saying isn't true. Okay, but we're gonna not go over to sidereal rotation and gyroscopes and Michelson-Gale-Pearson and whatever else we can do to completely like divert away from the point. It's an entirely different topic.
I just said
Sidereal rotation is totally different.
I just said a quantum gravimeter. That's all I said. Didn't say any of these other things. I said
you did. You started talking about a gyroscope.
Instead of using light, they use matter waves. Okay, same type of test.
Not relevant.
It is, because it's a more updated, more accurate test.
Oh, does the test detect sidereal motion?
No, it doesn't. But it measures a fringe. It measures an error, and it's not due to sidereal rotation or motion around.
What's it trying to measure? What's it trying to measure?
It's set up to, if there was this ether, it would affect it, and it doesn't.
I've never heard of such a thing. I've heard of like gravimetric interferometers that use matter. and
Yes.
they're not built to replicate Michelson-Morley and try to detect the orbit of the Earth because
It's the
because
same thing. It's the same. I'll tell you what it is. It's the same thing as the Michelson-Morley setup, except it uses matter waves. Not
what are
instead
they
of
trying to measure? Drop a paper. I've never heard of that.
they're trying to get the fringe shift. They're trying to measure it in the direction that we're traveling around the sun. See if there's a fringe shift.
You're claiming that people are trying to measure the orbit of the motion of Earth around the sun, the motion of the Earth around the sun, when they claim it can't be due to relativity. Okay, drop a paper where that's the case. I've never heard of
Who
such a thing.
claims
I don't
that?
believe
Sorry.
you at all.
You
That's
haven't
what
heard of
he
it.
just claimed.
Well, no,
That's what he just.
relativity doesn't say we can't measure the orbit of the Earth around the sun. It just says you measure the two relative to each other.
No, no, no. It says you can't detect the Earth's motion around the sun on the Earth. That is
Using
a
optical
fundamental
means.
claim. No, no, no. Not only optical means, he also has another explanation where he says any physical experiment on Earth.
That's not true at all.
I can't tell the difference
That's
between
incorrect.
the Earth is moving versus
It's
the sun
incorrect.
is moving.
It's
You can tell
incorrect. Wait,
the
it's
two are moving
incorrect that
relative to
Einstein
each other.
said it.
That's why when you cut me out,
So when four people all talk, they can act like I'm interrupting them. I'm responding to the first person. When
Go
you said it
ahead.
was incorrect, do you mean it's incorrect that Einstein said that, or you think Einstein's incorrect?
Your
I think you're
interpretation is
misrepresenting what
incorrect.
Einstein said. I think he
My
said
interpretation? Dude, why are you doing that? My interpretation of Einstein's incorrect? Okay, can you tell me what the quote was and then what the proper interpretation of it is?
Okay, the proper interpretation of it is that you can't tell whether the Earth is moving or the sun is moving or both are moving. You can only tell their relative motions to each other.
No, can you tell me what the quote was and how I'm
I can't remember the
misinterpreting it?
exact words, but you
You
probably
said
got
there
it in
was
front of
no
you.
way to detect
How about the
motion.
other guy who claimed I misinterpreted the quote answer instead of you?
Well, I was the one who said you misinterpreted the quote, so that's my
Okay, so
answer.
then you just lied. Okay, so
No,
this is the problem. You don't even know the
I'll back
quote,
it
and you're
up. I'll back
correcting
it
my
up.
understanding of it.
I know science. Like, I know how this
Oh
works.
my god, I know science. Oh my god.
Relativity is not that complicated a
Somebody
concept.
clip that,
Just one
bro.
second.
It's more basic
The
than
basic
that.
idea is you can't
He
tell which
said,
one's moving. You can tell
Explain
that they're
it.
moving relative to each other.
Explain
Sure,
relativity.
sure.
Octavia.
I baselessly corrected your recollection of the quote and then claimed you misinterpreted it and then admitted I don't even know the quote, don't know anything about it. But when you call me out for
I
that,
don't
I
know
can
it
just
word
say,
for word. I'm not
I
going to say
know
anything.
science.
can
Okay, can you give
run?
me a
Say one
brief
thing, please?
synopsis of the quote since you just don't know it word for word? Can you give me a brief synopsis of it and how I
I've
misunderstood it?
already done that. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with your quoting of him. I'm disagreeing with your
Okay.
interpretation.
Yeah.
No,
Can I?
no, 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 no.
Witsit,
What
can
people
I
always
please?
say is he
Can
only
I
said
finish,
it about
please?
optical experience. I know you guys are all chomping at the
No,
bit.
no.
Chill
I
out,
want to
dude.
because I want to interpret what he said and what he's right, and I agree with him as well. You misinterpreted because there are ways to measure our orbit around the sun.
No,
The
first,
tidal
then you're
shift,
saying Einstein was
our
wrong. That's okay. Just say
no,
he's wrong. Is he God? Is he your guy's
no. He
deity?
agreed. He agreed
Listen,
that
no,
what
he
you're
didn't.
without. Yes, he said. I don't really know it word for word, but he trusts that you quoted it correctly. He says you misinterpreted your understanding of it. I agree with that statement because you
But you
did.
guys are both assuming that because
No,
you have
let me make a statement that you will
what was I
prove
three
that
words
you're
in right
wrong.
there? Was that three
So
words in right there? You are
I
assuming
wasn't done.
that
Can I finish the
because
sentence?
you believe.
Can
Hey
I
man,
finish the
stop. Hey
sentence?
man, stop. Hey man, stop.
Can I
I
finish
can
the
go
sentence?
ahead. No, because I was in the middle of a sentence.
Oh no, okay. I was actually talking and I validated
No,
what he
you,
said, and I
dude,
was going to
Zanik, you always do
give you
this
a conclusion.
gaslighting thing where
You
you
won't let me do it.
interrupt me. Zanik, you always
It
do this thing
wasn't.
where
It
you
wasn't.
interrupt.
I was making a
You're doing it
statement,
right now. Stop,
and
stop,
Janik,
stop.
just for the sake of everyone listening, like a game of tennis, can we just hear it back and forth for the sake of
I
everyone
thought we were
listening?
going to do that, Gio. I'm sorry, but I
Well,
thought I could make a statement. But go ahead, Witsit. Why don't you
Well, the
finish?
thing is, dude,
I feel bad
you
because I
always
cut off all the sayings.
oh my god, you interrupt my point, and then when I go back to get it back, you're like, you're interrupting me. Okay, this is the thing, dude. I will help you guys out and still man you here, right? What you should be saying instead of arrogantly and assumptively assuming that Einstein is some infallible god, and so any quote he said I must stand by to this day. If you're going to take that approach, you're totally cooked because the modern interpretation of
Straw man.
relativity is stop. I didn't say you were doing that. I said if you are going to do that. That's not a straw man. That was just a completely unnecessary interruption, per usual. The modern interpretation and application of relativity within your own paradigm is grossly different than Einstein's initial interpretations. Einstein's interpretation of relativity changed drastically within his own life. Okay. So if you want to say that there's some more advanced interferometers that say use material, right, that he wasn't aware of when he made his claim. Therefore, he would have been making the claim based on his current understanding of instruments and tests at the time. You can try to make that argument. I'm going to destroy it, but at least make some argument that's intelligible and stop doing this like haughty, arrogant, like assumptive. You misinterpreted it, even though I don't know what it is. I did not misinterpret it. He said very specifically, right, that no physical experiment on Earth can detect the motion of the Earth. He has another quote where he said, I've come to the conclusion that no optical experiment can detect the motion of the Earth. So that means nothing using light and no physical test on Earth. So if you guys are saying, well, he was wrong, actually, we can detect, physically measure and detect Earth's orbital motion while standing on the Earth. Please explain how that doesn't violate relativity.
Okay, Witsit, what he was saying was that you can't tell the Earth's absolute motion. Your quoting is accurate, but he's talking about absolute motion. You can tell when two things are moving relative to each other. You don't know which one is the one moving in an absolute sense.
Holy shit.
And relativity is based on the idea that,
Oh yeah,
He doesn't
know
know
that.
relativity. He doesn't know what relativity is. What's it?
Well, I have one other thing I want to add to it. I'd like to finish what I was going to say earlier and be very brief, I promise. And I think you have a good conversation going here, and we'll take it down a notch. I think it's better, as Gio mentioned. So what we can't now, he didn't know of the things we can do today. Einstein. So yeah, he said if there was no errors in his system, and by his statement, he was correct for that time of the that part of history. But now we can detect whether we're rotating around the sun. We can see the gravitational forces on the Earth, measuring things like distances to the sun and our velocity with respect to the sun, relative motion, as I mentioned. Hold on, and the tidal forces that make our Earth get stretched at the equator. These are all things that we measure, and that we can deduce from those measurements that we are moving around the sun.
Okay. So
is that funny?
Total red herring. Total red herring. Actually,
No,
made
it's
like
actually
four.
You couldn't do that
Yeah,
before.
it was.
You do that now.
Yeah. Red herring. Okay, we're not talking about the distance to the sun. We're not talking about any of the things that you talked about. And then what you said at the end was we can basically imply, right? You're calling that a secondary measurement. Those existed at the time of Einstein. He writes about them in his paper Relativity. He literally writes about it in his like explanation that he called For Your Mother, right? Relativity, Special and General Theory, where he explains it. He talks about, well, we can obviously deduce secondary measurements or calculations of Earth's motion, and he used stuff like the motion of the stars, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an actual direct measurement. Okay. And so now that we've clarified that for you guys, would you like to admit that you can't, according to relativity, you cannot make a direct measurement? You cannot directly detect Earth's motion on Earth.
Yes, by using.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
that is true. Sorry, Zanick, go ahead.
A small point. Quantum gravimeters. There's all sorts of technology now that can actually measure this, and these aren't secondary. Like looking at the stars and saying, okay, well, we have to assume that they're out there really far away. That kind of thing. I know where you're going with that. Witsit. We can do other things with quantum gravimeters that say, hey, we can do things atomically. We can say this is due to us having motion around the sun and having these tidal forces that are dependent upon how close we are to the sun. That's why I was talking about distance, not a red herring. But I get your point. You're going at it very aggressively, but you have to realize if we use latest technology, we have far different results and better tests and with much lower errors than we did 120 years ago, obviously.
And so this is the problem. I just tried to Google this quote, and I know for a fact he said it, and it just doesn't pop up.
Yeah, the thing is, what Einstein said applies equally well to everything. You can't tell if the ball is moving in a baseball game or if the entire stadium is moving around and the ball's still. That is not in principle.
You can live in that Narnia world, right? But I can actually physically measure.
This is what Einstein was saying. This is what he meant.
No.
Like elementary school,
it applies equally well to literally everything. So
okay, guess what we can do? We can stand on the Earth and treat it as
you're interrupting him with
Let me finish here. You can't tell which one's moving. You can only tell they're moving relative to the other. Now, in practice, you're going to say, obviously, the stadium is still and the ball's moving. Don't be dumb. But in theory, there's no difference between the two.
Dude, that's so elementary school shit, dude. Like, did you read the paper?
Moving, but you can tell that they are moving relative to each other. And that relative motion is what we're measuring when we're measuring Earth-Sun movements. So that's what we're measuring. What you're saying is not relevant to measuring the Earth's orbit around the Sun in practical terms. That's it.
Okay, so this is the thing, right? Like if Zanick, for example, is going to say that super long loaded point to me, and then someone else is going to say another point directed at me, right? Like it, yeah. When I start to interrupt, like I mean, can we be reasonable? So
Meta, meta,
it's
meta,
a
meta, meta.
no. You just always got stupid little girl comments about me interrupting, and it's literally impossible for me to communicate with multiple people at the same time, making 15 points each, unless I start to interject.
No,
So
I mean, it just
okay,
seemed
I
like
want to
you
make
had
the.
a problem with
All right, cool,
interrupting,
man.
so I wanted to point out to you when you were.
Oh, well, are you ever going to point out when I get interrupted?
Oh, don't
No.
worry about that. You'll point that out immediately.
That's not even true,
Weird.
actually. I let it go like 17 times. Okay, now here I want to make this point that we were talking about earlier before it gets lost, right? Because I'm going to
In
put
order
it
to
into
ignore
the.
his point, gotcha.
Wait,
Weird.
what was his point?
Interrupt again.
Wait, come out. What was his point? Can you summarize it? Yeah. So maybe just go on mute, bro.
No,
So
Suck
you
it.
this is.
interrupted him, so I didn't quite catch it.
Oh, okay. So his point was as simple as they possibly could come. It would be what you learned in about seventh grade that all motion is relative. That was really his point. That's all it was. So yeah, no one. I understand. Like that actually relative motion
Okay,
isn't
if you
even exclusive
understand it,
to the
why didn't you address it?
Oh,
because
weird.
it
You're
literally isn't
interrupting.
relevant to my point at all, right? And what's super funny is that that is not even exclusive to the theory of relativity. Relative motion was known and established long before the theory of relativity, so conflating the two is kind of weird. But you're claiming what Einstein meant. That isn't all he meant, right? He went out specifically to try to detect that and to try to figure out why we can't detect that. Okay, but this isn't like a deflection. The entire context of the conversation is Michelson-Morley and supposedly not being able to detect the orbital motion. You have to make that claim or you guys are cooked, and you guys are cooked anyway. But I just want to correct the record so people that actually want to know will know, right? So I went in here and actually got the kilometer per second and fringe shift numbers so that you would understand it. Okay. So they claim that the Earth's orbital speed is 30 kilometers per second. So then they predicted a fringe shift based on that, right? The fringe would be 0.4 fringe. 0.4 fringe shift, which is 30 kilometers per second. They got 5 to 7 kilometers per second, right? So that's like 0.75 to 1 kilometer a second. Okay. And if you or the instrument was capable of measuring to 0.01 fringe. So it was capable of measuring 0.01 fringe. They predicted 0.4 fringe, right? And then they measured like 0.1. They measured well above the margin of error. It wasn't even close to the margin of error. So the margin of error was about 0.75 to 1 kilometer per second, and they measured 5 to 7 kilometers per second. So can we all agree that the measurement that they got was not within the error margin?
If you're quoting the numbers accurately, I agree with that.
Okay, so we just got to stop. It's just this hand-wave dismissal claim that isn't true. It wasn't within the error margin. We're going to have to come up with another explanation. Now, of course, the people at the time and after that, they knew that, which is why Einstein set out to explain the result. If it was simple as saying it was an error, he would have never even tried to explain it, right? So the problem is, though, he what they do is they explained why, in theory, it would be zero, right? And then they have to claim it's instrumental error, and they don't understand why. Okay, so and I'm just making that point because that's like the context of this whole thing. And so, like, I'm happy to hear you guys break down supposedly how what you say the quantum gravimeter or something, right? Like supposedly is detecting the motion of the Earth. Because what you guys need to know is that if we're on the Earth, according to relativity, you literally cannot have a direct first order measurement and detection of that orbital motion. And if you can, then you have to now re-explain Michelson-Morley.
Or the more accurate equipment that I mentioned earlier, right? So we
But
have
does the more accurate
Michelson-Morley.
equipment not adhere to relativity?
Oh yeah, well that's why with the Thorndike test they actually didn't get they had the null result also because they said that, and this is like how convenient, right? They say, what did they say? You already said many times that the length contraction obviously matched everything, so it actually kind of just neutral, even everything out, so it didn't show a result. So that would be and I would okay, good point. It's like saying, hey, it's not a picture of the moon, or the Earth, it's being round, it's CGI. Okay, so when we go to more accurate equipment like the optical cavity resonators, things like that, which have I mean billions and billions of times more accuracy than Michelson-Morley. They have the same exact result as we've had with the crude measuring devices like Michelson-Morley of 120 years ago, because we're talking about an error margin of 10 to the minus 9, 1 part in a billion. That was the Michelson-Morley. And the new versions are 10 to the minus 18. So,
What? Okay.
it's an exciting day.
I'm gonna say this quote that was argued about. To the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments, meaning experiments on Earth.
These are terrestrial experiments. Even
Right.
the
So
cavity resonators
to
are.
that question that we are literally currently discussing, the question of whether or not the motion of the Earth can be detected on Earth with experiments, to that question of whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments, we have already remarked that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result.
Was Einstein aware of what Zanick is talking about?
No, but now what Zanick needs to explain is how his object, or his instrument, somehow doesn't adhere to length contraction.
Yeah, it's not a cop out. It's actually an explanation. But I agree with you. I think there should be more detail. Like, how do we show evidence for length contraction? Well, there's many experiments that actually show that we have length contraction for objects that are going near the speed of light. We have SLAC, which is a multi-billion-dollar facility, which is dedicated to show this particular phenomena. Do you think it's all just pie in the
Zanick,
sky?
are you really not getting it though? Are you really not
Wait,
understanding?
did you not hear my question? Can you explain how your instrument that you're invoking doesn't
Yeah, he wants to know
adhere
about
to or isn't subject to length contraction?
You're saying it is not subject
You're
to length.
claiming it's detecting the
Damn,
motion of
Zanick.
the Earth, which means it can't be.
I didn't say that. I said it's looking to measure the ether, looking to measure this linear velocity, which it can't measure, and so they don't have any ether because its accuracy versus the Michelson-Morley, which is 1 in a billion. This is 8 more zeros than a billion.
But
That
it's
is
using material.
Well, it's an optical cavity resonator. It's a little different technology, just like the quantum. Those quantum gravimeters that were used as well. The Kennedy Thorndike experiment. I mean, there's a lot of equipment that not only SLAC. We got the LIGO also, which is doing things with measuring these similar types of effects.
Okay, so there is nothing that detects the motion of the Earth.
Witsit, surely you're aware of the Foucault's pendulum, right?
Foucault's pendulum detects allegedly the rotation of the Earth. We're talking about the orbital motion of Earth.
The speed around the sun. Yeah, we're in free fall. I mean, yes, the only thing we can do is secondary measurements, as you admitted to, and we're going to admit to it as well, to measure that. Now, if there are other equipment these all have secondary measurements, so I don't want to bring them up because you're just going to shoot them down, which, for good reason. I'm on your side on this.
So we agree. Do we agree it's a decently sufficient explanation of religion to say that it's like a belief system built upon the doctrine of men that requires blind faith?
No.
In the supernatural.
No, I don't think it's that at all. Because these secondary measurements are valid.
No, I'm just saying, like, is that the definition of religion?
No, religion requires
good one,
the
Rich.
supernatural.
Good one.
Supernatural.
Is scientism about the supernatural?
No, science is only ever about the natural.
I mean, is Scientology about supernatural?
No, but Scientology isn't the same thing as science. Do I need
Is
to
it a
explain that
religion?
to you, Witsit?
No.
Scientology is a
if you can
religion.
follow what I'm
but
asking.
Scientology
Is Scientology a
based on
religion?
Sorry, I'm not done yet, Witsit. Scientology is a religion, but Scientology is not science.
This guy
I didn't
sucks.
say it was. See if you can keep up instead of being so condescending, ironically.
Why'd you bring up
Okay.
Scientology when we were talking about
Yeah,
science?
that
Well,
was a
we'll
bit
see
of
if you
a
can keep up here, right? You said religion requires the supernatural. Does
Correct.
Scientology make claims about the supernatural?
Yes, it does.
What is it?
Thetans.
What is
yeah.
that?
Scientology is like
You want me to
nukes
explain
in
all of
volcanoes
Scientology
65
to you,
million years
Witsit?
ago. Crazy
Is
shit
that
like
what you
that.
want? Okay, so
Explain how
if
that's
Witsit
supernatural.
asks me for what Scientology is, I'm going to give him a very in-depth look at what
Okay, this guy
Scientology
Oh,
is.
sucks.
Okay,
Jesus.
Okay,
This
so
guy
this guy
sucks,
when you
man.
sucks.
have
This guy sucks.
what you have attached to your soul are called thetans. You can read them via an e-meter and specific
Give a
questions that
very
are
short
asked of
version.
you.
Dude, you
So when
think
you have things
religion is
attached to
bullcrap
your
and you believe in
soul
this?
called thetans, they are above the natural because they're attached to your soul.
Oh, okay. So Scientology doesn't just believe in the natural. That's cool. You'll have to let them know that. So
Well,
this is the thing, right? Hey man,
But
hey
you
man,
know
hey man, hey
Scientology,
man, hey
right?
man, hey
You read
man,
all
hey
of
man,
them.
hey man, hey man. Can you guys agree that science is not about belief systems that men create that require blind faith?
I mean, the whole point of science is you go out and measure the real world. It's not
Right. So
like
it doesn't require blind faith. It eliminates the need for blind faith, right?
more or less. I mean, you get
Right.
philosophical enough, you can go crazy, but in practical terms,
Okay.
yes.
So we can disagree on religion, right? Whether it needs a supernatural component, what does or doesn't constitute a supernatural component, right? Because that's where you guys will certainly apply supernatural bias. This guy will, but I don't care, right? Like, okay, I disagree with you. I like my definition.
Witsit,
It's
don't
a
get mad when someone says no when you ask if it's a religion, man. If you don't want to hear the answer, don't
what?
ask the question.
No, no, no. I didn't ask if it was a religion. I didn't say was science a religion. So you just made up what I said, strawmanned it, and then arrogantly pretended I was spiraling or something. No, no, no. I'm saying, is this a decent definition of religion? You said no, it needs to have supernatural. Okay, I guess I kind of see your point. I don't necessarily agree. Maybe, right? Okay. I think you can have a religious belief without the supernatural. I think that the definition of religion is much more about dogma and blind faith. Now,
Cool.
it
So you
typically
disagree with the dictionary definition of religion. Okay, keep going.
sure, if that's sure. So, and I would say that what we're about to discuss actually borderline supernatural, but I know you guys will just say it doesn't, right? Because conveniently we get to pick and choose, and so things that are outside of the natural world and can't be accessed within the natural world, right, would normally constitute a supernatural, but you guys will somehow claim that it's not supernatural, right? Because you just have this like weird cognitive position where you want to believe that you're a materialist and a naturalist and you're a science first person, but then you have tons of beliefs that require making claims outside of nature and like natural verification, right? For example, the idea that the reason that we didn't detect orbital motion was because there was something called length contraction. And so even though one of the lights did travel a longer path and it did take longer to travel that longer path because both light paths, of course, were traveling the same speed, right? So light goes one speed and then one's going further than the other one. So that means it takes longer, right? Speed equals distance over time, of course. So one of the light beams traveled further, therefore took longer. But when we go and look at the measurement, it doesn't show that it went further, doesn't show that it took longer, but it did. Trust me, what happened was the apparatus contracted just precisely the exact amount needed
As it should.
to make it look like that's so bad faith to retroactively say as it should when this theory was literally crafted around that measurement. Anyway,
It was
it
an
just
I
it
mean, when does the miracle come in? Even if it
wait,
did contract,
wait,
all of that
wait,
is
wait.
natural.
We're about
well,
to talk about no, it's not. No, actually it's not. So the apparatus contracted just the perfect amount, but you can't measure it. It looks the same. There's no actual physical, material, natural evidence whatsoever of it shrinking or changing size. It's exactly the same as when you started, but trust me, it actually shrank You just can't tell. You just can't see it. You just can't detect it. You just can't measure it. It just isn't perceptible in the natural world.
There are measurements of it.
And
There are
Simon,
measurements.
no, there are
like
not.
what
No,
you're
there are
being told,
not.
Witsit, is that
No,
people have
there
taken a
are
more
not.
refined measurement and that they
Yes.
have measured it.
Correct.
You're
No,
lost.
they
You're lost,
haven't.
Rich.
No, they
Yeah.
haven't. And at
Well-
the same time, because we have to claim that the distance contracted, that means that the time also had to change. So time physically stretched out and dilated. It physically stretched, thus slowed down just the precise amount to match just the precise amount of shortening of the arm so that it would look like there was no difference, yet
Well-
it did travel further and take longer. Is that a good still
Let
man
me-
there?
let me-
I
We're
posted
looking-
some, I mean, literally just Wikipedia, but I posted it in chat for you to take a look at.
I know the supposed
experimental
evidences.
verification of
Okay, so-
relative-
Muons and I know, no, it just presupposes it's a thing.
Well, let's just talk about what you said. Because I think you get the numbers a little mixed up too. They predicted the 0.4 fringe, right? We all agreed to that. Would you agree to that? Witsit?
Yeah.
0.4 fringe. Okay. The tool could measure 0.01 fringes, and that's what they actually measured. They get this 1.1 fringe as a result. So that's
No.
0.01
Wrong.
versus-
No, Zanick.
Wrong.
That's not wrong.
They didn't measure 0.01.
Witsit literally just went over this.
Yeah, but
Really?
he was going off memory, and I think he got a zero. He got a just one decimal place incorrect.
I think you
No.
just did that.
Wait, let's just
I just went through the calculation based on this 30 kilometers per second velocity and the wavelength of light and the length of the arm and that gives us 0.4 fringes. He disagreed. What they measured, and that was the limit. The limit of this device was 0.01 fringes, and they saw almost zero. That's what they saw back.
I heard you say 0.1 twice, Zanick.
Close to 0.1.
But then you said 0.01 because they're not the same.
You're right. 0.01 to 0.02 fringes.
Okay, so you did mess up. There we go.
Well, no, there's a range. It wasn't accurate back in those days. 0.01 to 0.02 fringes because they expected 0.4 and they got 0.01.
Okay, what's
So that's essentially zero.
1/6 of 0.4?
They saw 1/40th of what the physics of the time predicted. 1/40th. 1/40th of what the physics of the time predicted.
Okay, so
that's my notes. 3 years ago, I have this notes from our little chit chat.
Okay, so from my understanding, right, the sensitivity of the instrument is like 3 decimal places to 0.01, and that it can detect like 0.75 or to 1 kilometer per second. But what was actually measured was 5 to 7 or 8
kilometers per second, but not fringes.
So there isn't a direct relationship between kilometers per second and fringes. It's like not a 1-to-1 relationship. It's not linear.
Yeah. Oh no, it is. It's
a number.
Okay, well, if it's linear, then it would be 1/6 of 0.04. I mean 0.4. And if very simply, right, if the sensitivity of the instrument was 0.75 to 1 kilometer per second, they predicted 30 kilometers per second, but they actually detected 5 to 7 kilometers per second, and that means the detected fringe shift, right, or interference pattern was outside of the error margin, was beyond the sensitivity of the instrument.
Yeah, the problem is, Witsit, it says that it's within the error margin when you look it up. I think they're measuring it in a different way because I saw that
fringes 0.01 to 0.02 fringes is what they measured. Now I don't know how I can do the math on what that relates to in kilometers per second around the sun.
Well, it obviously can't be linear then, right? Like if it's a direct relationship, it's like super simple. Like what's 1/6 of 0.4?
I get it, but I think this is what I wrote down, and I think this is. I know 0.4. We all can agree. Can we all agree that's 0.4 fringe? So all we have to do is do the equivalence of what a fringe, what 0.1 fringe equates to in a velocity.
0.01.
0.01 or 0.02. They measured 0.01 to 0.02. They can easily measure 0.01 is what I remember reading. Yeah, let's look it up here.
No, it's 0.06. 0.066.
0.06 is when you multiply 1/16 by the 0.4 or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
1/6 of
0.06.
0.4.
okay, so at the time they said it was around 1.01 to 0.02. Maybe the new versions of Mickelson Morley saw something larger, 0.06, whatever. Still a small fraction of what you needed to have that amount of velocity through the ether around the sun.
That isn't the argument, right? Like, yeah, it was way less than what would be needed if the Earth was orbiting the sun.
Still simple. I agree.
Yeah, the Earth's not orbiting the sun, bruh. Like, duh, right? But that the question is like,
Duh?
is there any motion, right? Because
Right.
there should be zero.
Right.
There should be zero.
So you can say, I know you can say it can be convenient. How convenient it's moving, and this fringe now is explained by the Lorentz
Well,
contraction.
Einstein called it convenient. He actually used that word.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm with you. This is
Okay.
physics, and that's why we're talking about it, because it could be like spooky magic at a distance type of stuff, right? I get it.
Well, it's
But
just
there's
like
but
it's
but is
post
the
hoc
thing?
rationalization and requires blind faith.
Yeah, dude,
No,
that's the problem is you get the math that makes it work, and then everyone's like, oh, that's it. There it goes.
And then you
well,
literally
that-
flipped all of physics upside down and changed all of it to make sure that that somehow could be claimed to be the truth.
Right. But then after you go, okay, let's try to figure this out, guys. Let's try to build something. Here's $1 billion, 100 years later. Let's build LIGO. Let's build Slack, and let's do some tests to see if we can actually replicate
LIGO
this
shows the
idea.
same thing.
LIGO's not the same thing as Slack.
No, LIGO shows the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Slack's different because they actually can measure these pulses at near light speed and see how they contract relative to the observer, showing it's
Zanick,
Zanick,
can I
how
ask
is
you a
that like?
question? Do you honestly not think like genuinely, do you honestly not think that it is a possible, like a genuine possibility that the explanation to why we didn't detect the orbital motion is because there isn't any?
No, I think there's enough.
That would be consistent with
Really
that
honest,
one
I think,
experiment.
and I
It's
know
not consistent with all
I
the
truly
other
think that
experiments.
there's enough evidence to show we are moving, but I understand it's not conclusive in your mind.
Well, at the least, you would have to say it's possible with your whole like nothing is 100%. But this is the thing, right? Like, I happen to not believe you, right? Like, I think you do believe that we're moving around the sun. I think that you have like strong doubts about it, right? And I think maybe it's been a while since I've talked to you. I don't know. Maybe those doubts are like a little less. I don't really know, because most people like don't really hit this point as hard as I do, because I think it's like the first point before you talk about shape or anything like that. I think
You
it's actually
talk
the
to a
most
lot of,
important.
if I might, you speak to a lot of physicists and PhD physicists and astrophysicists, and I've heard some of the arguments. What is some of? I'm sure not all. I haven't seen all of them. What are your most favorite responses by these physicists that actually know this topic much better than I do, or maybe other people here possibly? And there's a lot of smart guys around.
Mhm.
What are they telling? What do they respond back to you with?
Like, my favorite is your question? Like what do I think is the most intellectually honest and most viable one,
Because
you
the
know?
smartest guy
Like,
you've walked into
that
these,
relativity is wrong. That
and what do
we don't that there is from your paradigm, like, the best argument all
they?
around is that the fundamental principle of relative motion is true, and that some type of causal mechanism akin to Lorentz contraction must exist, right? And so, like, the 4D space geometry effects claimed, though assumptive, must be true, but relativity is not the correct understanding. And, like, I've heard that put forth in a few different ways. Like, it just depends on how honest people are, and it depends if it's on the record or not. Like, as soon as the camera comes on, people are way different.
Yeah,
But
that's why I asked you the question, because I wanted to hear, because I know you interact with a lot of people, and you have a good way of presenting your questions. You're not being like deceptive, and you're trying to like gotcha. I think you want to actually know, and you also have beliefs as well as we do, and you think your evidence is stronger than ours, or maybe how convenient all these are like excuses to you. All these theories are just excuses of why we are living in a flat plane that's we're not on a sphere rotating around the sun, flying through the cosmos at breakneck speeds. I get that, and
well,
you have
I can understand people. I can understand people getting hung up on the flat thing, especially after I saw the sun, way more, and always has been way more than the not moving thing, right? Like, when
Yeah.
someone isn't honest about the not moving thing, like not meaning that they just concede we're not moving, but they're not honest that there's a strong possibility once they actually learn the history of it in like the retroactive post hoc, rationalization way that they just hijacked the geocentric prediction over and over and over because it kept being right and they kept being wrong. And so they just changed the model to be the geocentric claim over and over. Like when people are actually informed of that, which will not happen unless you go somewhere like this, right? And then they still continue to pretend they know for a fact that we're moving. Like, yeah, like I don't respect that at all. I think it's intellectually dishonest.
I get it.
I was going to bring up the exact same thing, just because, like, I could see like people still being whatever about flat Earth, but Zanick, I don't know how you guys can't be like, wow, relativity is really weird, and there's a lot of stuff that goes against it, and it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It is weird, and I don't understand it. But I do know there's a lot of evidence for it. For example, like atomic clocks and satellites and all these things that we can show that, hey, you know what? Maybe we don't understand it totally or what causes it completely, but we can show the things that we think we know. I think we do know, like the Lorentz effect.
Yeah,
you're relying on a whole bunch of like technology and stuff. You're
stealing my thunder. Yeah, and I'm relying on all the, like you said it for me. I'm relying on all these things that people have told me. Yes, I haven't experimented. I haven't been in the lab. I mean, I've been in some of these places, but I didn't do the experiments, and I don't. It's been millions of years since I've done the math, so I'm way out of the loop. I'm just going off. It's not a belief, but it's like whoever has the best evidence kind of wins in my mind.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When you actually look into those things, man, like, okay, that sounds good, right? Like, if what you're saying is true, it's a strong piece of evidence. If, like this is the mainstream story, right? Like, we couldn't even properly utilize satellites if we didn't make relativistic corrections. And what do you know? When we did, it worked perfectly, and it perfectly matched relativistic corrections and predictions, and is strong verification for relativity, right? And that, if that were true, that's pretty strong evidence. You're like, that's true, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. When you actually look into it, that's not what happened at all. And it's the same thing with like the Halfling and Keating experiment, which is touted as this gigantic verification of relativity. And it's like, oh, relativity says, right, that one clock is going to go slower than the other based on the direction that they travel. And it's like, what do you know? It actually did that exactly like relativity predicted. That's pretty crazy. Then I went and dug into it. We did, right? And we saw the actual data sheet of Halfling and Keating, like their actual recorded measurements, which you're not going to find in like a Google search, which should speak for itself. Just like I just tried to look up the terrestrial experiment quote, and you can't find it anywhere. You can only find the optical experiment with hit pieces against people that supposedly cherry pick it. But my point is, you that should be a flag right there if we're using any type of pattern recognition, right? That the actual data of that test is super hard to find. When we actually find it, it does not match the relativistic prediction at all. It shows that the clock slowed down and sped up in both east and west directions. So not only is that not a verification of relativity, it's arguably a falsification of it. And
which
the same thing,
was this?
the Haffel and Keating experiment where they put atomic clocks on a plane. And like if you Google it and you say like, what are the proofs of relativity, that'll be on the list. And the other claim is where Dayton Miller, like in what was it, like 1917, he saw, it was 1917 or I don't remember, but he supposedly saw relativity predicted that you'd see the star from behind the sun, right? And that happened. That because of the gravity of the sun, the relativity would have the bending and warping of space-time cause the light to basically bend around the sun and be visible, although it was occulted by the sun. And what do you know? We went and looked at it and we saw it.
Why would the direction affect the atomic clocks?
You tell me.
I would think it's not, since motion is relative and you're on the ground, it wouldn't matter which direction the satellite's going.
Right? You tell me then. You tell me.
Well, because one satellite, I'll tell you, because one satellite's going to go 1,000 miles an hour less orbital velocity, so it's going slower with respect to the observer than the ones that are going east to west, which were given that bit of angular momentum when they took off and got into orbit, right?
What is that? What you were saying that the relativistic prediction is?
I wouldn't think there'd be I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head. I wouldn't think there would be a difference going east or west.
Okay, so
well, it
about
is the Zanick star correction in GPS.
The Earth is going 1,000 miles an hour east to west. So if you're an observer, you are actually going 1,000 miles an hour east to west. Angular velocity of one revolution every 24 hours. This satellite's going to be relative to you going 1,000 miles an hour faster than a satellite going the other direction. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's in the right direction of what they're claiming.
So I think
right.
it wouldn't be that far fetched to say that's not like made up or stupid. I mean, it just seems like that makes sense.
Yeah, this is my point, right? Like when we go do the test showed that in both directions, the super sensitive atomic clocks both increased and decreased. Okay, so if like on its face, my model predicts it's just like this very like simplistic AE model that I never claimed, right? But like I entertained and a bunch of people claimed. Like once I went to Antarctica and saw the sun do a circle and whether it was optical, whatever it was, right? Like that current understanding and model claim isn't true. How insane and asinine would I look to come back and claim it was still true with
Right.
no alternative explanation, and then to actually actively suppress like all of the search results that showed what we actually saw, then came back and rephrased what we saw and claimed it actually proved the AE map. I mean, you would immediately think like this is
Yeah.
super scary. If you ever found out I did that, you'd be like, okay, not only can I not trust this guy at all, but it seems like he knows what he's saying isn't true. And this actually seems to falsify everything that he's ever said. And it
Right.
seems like he knows he needs to lie to even try to claim it's true.
I got
Right?
you.
Yeah.
I got you. No, you're making sense. By the way,
That happens over and over.
I don't think I've talked to you since you did this whole, by the way, good for you for going, man. I'm very proud of you for going and what an experience that would have been. So now that you saw the 24-hour sun, maybe we talked about it. Maybe we talked a little bit when you got back.
Oh, man,
I know you still think the Earth is flat, but you think it's some kind of dome or some type of thing where that sun is local sun, or there's two suns?
I don't know. I have no. I mean, dude, it just resets everything. So I don't really know. Right?
You're kind of on the fence. You're like a glober on the fence glober now.
No. Because like there's like a long list of falsifications of the curve of the Earth, bro. I went and did some of them, right? Like I don't like it would be super illogical for me to just throw those out. And trust me, I know the supposed answers better than almost anyone, and you should know that, right? Like I don't buy them. I don't buy them. I don't buy that when it's super clear outside. I see way further, but not just because it's clear and I'm seeing what's actually there, but because coincidentally, when it's super clear is when there's more refraction, right? I don't believe that magically when we shoot high frequency microwave beams horizontally parallel to the Earth that only have 1 meter of beam divergence. And I mean, we use this for targeting systems for the military where people's lives are at stake and has a 99.9% accuracy, right? And according to the globe, it should get blocked very quickly, like a few hundred feet, and it's going miles, dozens of miles.
We talked about the tunneling and the atmospheric effect.
It's the most insane claims I've ever heard, dude. It's like tropospheric ducting, inversion, temperature inversion layers.
We had hours.
Yeah, but dude, if it was a temperature inversion layer, then the military couldn't use it every day, all day, because that's an anomalous effect, right? Like it's the most ridiculous arguments I've ever heard. So, like, I actually feel that I invested more time into being intellectually honest and trying to earnestly come up with valid rebuttals for the globe than any of the globers do, right? The globers are just in a perpetual, like, arrogant victory lap. They're not actually trying to do anything when it comes to the refutations. I mean, sometimes, but kind of not, right? Like when they hit a wall, they're just like, whatever, who cares? I just know it's wrong. So I looked into that. There's not an answer for that, bro. There's not an answer for that. Microwave are probably one of the easiest refutations of the globe. So is the sun interesting? Yeah. And like I'll even go as far as to say like the sky like matches the globe. Like point blank. Like the sky, like there's some caveats to that. It doesn't fully like what people were talking about when they see the star occulted by the mountain and it doesn't actually match the curved geometry prediction and stuff like that. But generally speaking, the way that it's mapped out, the way that the sun looks, the way that the directionality of the sun, like the perceived directionality of the sun, of course, the 24-hour sun, like That's like the match of a globe. Like one thing's for sure on this realm, right? And I can say this, people can believe I didn't go, they can believe I didn't know where I was, whatever, sure, right? As you go south over what people call the equator, it looks like you're starting to tip over, right? Like that's actually what happens. And so like obviously on a globe, you would start to tip over. Like the sky looks like you're tipping over, right? And so, you know, like I sat on that entire trip beginning to end thinking about if the earth could be a globe. The whole time before we even got on the plane where I wasn't sure if we were actually going to get on the plane, and then they were super sketchy right before we got on, and it literally almost got canceled the day before we left.
No, you guys were
Literally,
so
like
all the way around. It was such an amazingly lucky event for you folks. Yeah,
it was
incredible.
super clear when we got there. It was all very wild, and it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen when we hit Antarctica. I would do it again for sure. And me stepping away had nothing to do with that. But like anyway, all
Okay,
that being
on
said,
the
right,
fence.
and it was really pretty. We were in it. We were there, and all of a sudden, it's super dark. It's like super surreal. It's like dark, but you just see like a bright spot over there in the distance that doesn't go away, right? Like it's weird. It's like yeah, like the sun's over there the whole time. Like it's very surreal. And then we flew towards it, and what do you know? It comes up, and we see it, and it just stays around us, right? Like that all happened. But my understanding up to that point kind of already incorporated a lot of that understanding, right? Like the very simplex AE map has multiple problems, and like even the direction of the sun, right? Like I've proposed viable options where, like, if you have a personal little dome, it changes directions. I've shown literally that that's absolutely what happens. And I've shown that it would look exactly like a sunrise and sunset, like even though the light source just stays at the same height, all of those things. And then we show, well, what do you know? Like all the evidence kind of seems to show us that we don't see in Euclidean geometry. So is what happened in very simple terms. I'm not just going to rant forever, but like this is my general position here is like I still lean towards we see the world in like a curved geometry and we live on a plane. And if you were to even honestly go out and try to determine the shape or nature of Earth by looking at the sky, if you did not assume or think about us seeing it in a from like a curved geometry, you would naturally transpose that on the ground. And then it would, of course, perfectly match because you would make the ground from the sky. And that's what we did. That's what we did with coordinate systems. That's what we did with maps. That's what we did with everything. We literally made the ground from the sky.
Is it the way your eyes work, or is it this personal dome that you're
Well, that would
saying that?
be similar things, right? But
Well, not
yeah, I
really,
mean,
because you have instruments that actually have you can change your focal points, your focal lengths, your lens sizes. I mean, all that stuff. So I mean, I just have a problem with things in the distance. Getting the whole
well,
trigonometric. I don't want to
this is
bore any.
kind of like what happens with this conversation the whole time, right? It's like one side is admittedly simpler in many ways. And actually, the flat earth is simpler in a lot of ways as well, right? Like just intuitively on a base level and all of that. Like, I don't feel like I'm moving because I'm not moving. I don't feel like I'm moving because I'm actually tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving, and then I'm free falling. So I can't even measure with the world's most precise measurements. And it feels like I'm standing still, but I'm actually not. And everything looks like it's moving, but it's actually not. It's like everything is like much more complicated and violates Occam's razor from a globe perspective, but there are a few exceptions. This is why I think it's like super weird what people are doing is they're honing on the few exceptions of being like, look at like let's apply Occam's razor and clearly the globe works. Because that's the argument for the 24-hour sun. The actual argument, because you can't make any other argument that's not fallacious other than Occam's razor, which isn't like like a substantial like argument. That isn't even a matter of fact argument,
Well,
right?
that's
Like
that's that's saying that spherical geometry is more complicated than planar geometry, which is definitely true. But
well, no,
that's not
it's saying even
really
the
a
motion
basis
is
for
more
argument.
complicated. The motion as well, right? Like the motion is actually the much more complicated claim of the globe model, right? But um anyway, like Occam's razor would say, okay, if I'm on a globe, then I'm going to start to tip upside down. And when I get to the bottom of it, then I'm going to see the sun just do circles over top of me. I see suns do circles over top of me. Therefore, I must be on the bottom of the globe. Like that's affirming the consequent, of course. But you can say, okay, the idea that I'm on a flat plane and then there's a sun moving over top of it, but it just looks like it's doing circles. Okay, there's a dome that has layers and is creating an apparent effect relative to the observer, and just so happens as you get out to the outside that based on the angles of dome optics, it stays above you. And
Reflection or reflections and all that.
And it kind of makes sense as the sky curves. If there's some type of dome that has layers and it's curving, then as you go along closer to the outside, it's going to start to curve. Right. So if you actually think about that logically, if I'm on a globe, as I get past the equator, I'm curving down. And if I'm on a plane with a dome, as I get to, as I go towards the outside, the dome is curving down. Right. So like again, you have this like kind of this dichotomy of
You need to
T
go to the
curve,
edge.
T
The
flat.
problem you need to go to the edge now. You didn't go far enough. You need to go all the way to the edge. Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
never going back there, man.
You
Like
need to go to the exact South Pole where
I
there's no other people.
literally felt like humans don't belong there.
Yeah.
But
But
but it was really pretty. But it was so pretty that I could just see it was pretty on the plane, you know.
well,
But
I'm glad you're. Thanks for everything because I always wanted to ask you about it, and so thanks for being honest.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So who knows, man? But and to conclude that point, like it sounds good to say Occam's razor like that, which requires least amount of assumptions, is most likely to be true. It's like very simple. It's basic geometry, and that's why we saw the sun do what it is. Or you're making up all these crazy excuses. The people that say that, and typically very arrogantly, they don't apply that same standard to their side, though, right? Like even with the conversation we're just talking about MMX. Okay, let's
Mhm.
apply that same exact standard. Okay, my position is the Earth's not moving. We're gonna go make a test, really precisely try to measure the Earth moving. But like, it really doesn't matter how precise it is. You're not going to detect the Earth moving because it's not. And what do you know? You don't detect it. And then the other side says, well, no, actually it is moving. But what happened was, that the apparatus contracted. It just looks like it's the same size and time stretched out and slowed down. And it just seemed like it was the same time. And it did it both at the same time and precisely exact amount that needed with this random test that was done in 87. And then we took that random amount and we applied it to everything else. And it's like, just trust me, bro. We can't see it because it's impossible to see it, but we know that it's true. And it's like, okay, bro, right? Or like, we're gonna develop these huge telescopes and look out further into the sky, and the Earth's not moving, so it's in the center of the universe. So as we look out further, it's just going to show that everything is moving relative to the Earth, and everything shows that the Earth's in the center. And if we're not, then we're going to see redshift and blue shift and things moving all over the place because we're just a tiny speck of dust in a random corner that doesn't matter at all. So we're going to see stuff go crazy when we get outside of our immediate little neighborhood. When we actually see outside of it, we see no, everything's very ordered, orchestrated, and relative to Earth. Everything looks like the Earth's in the center. So then the other side comes along and revises its story, changes its model, and says, like, oh, it's going to always look like we're in the center and look like we're not moving, even though we actually are, you know? And so you get my point. It's like a long winded way of saying it's like, I was confused by Jaron. I'm confused by the people that are coming at me so crazy. It's like, I'm actually the one that's being intellectually consistent. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm applying the same standard to both sides. I'm like, I get your argument with this on, but like, why don't you can't pick and choose? Like, are you going to apply that same standard to everything else? And that's not, by the way, it's not a good standard to live by, right? Like, Occam's razor isn't a matter of truth standard. Like, it's a good start, right? It
No,
isn't a matter of truth. Sometimes things are more complicated. Sometimes things aren't what they seem. You can't just rely on Occam's razor or what's the easiest, simplest thing to understand.
right. But I agree that we have to take you mentioned it earlier, secondary measurements, and that's what I go off. So yeah, okay, we take the first measurement. Hey, it could be us moving or that or other thing moving. Let's take more measurements. Let's start measuring the gravitational effects. Let's start measuring all the things that all these brand new, incredibly accurate instrumentations allow us to acquire as far as data. Let's do that. And then suddenly the data just piles up in my corner. I'm sure you looked at a lot of it, but it just seems like it all backs up. It could be all wrong. It could be based on one fundamental assumption, and the rest of it's just ancillary, and it could be 180 degrees, inverted. But I don't think it is. That's my personal opinion.
Well, yeah, man, I get it. I get it. I mean, the strongest piece of evidence for the globe that came from the Antarctica trip was actually the inversion of the sunspots.
Right. Yeah.
So, if there's some type of optical effect, it isn't just like us seeing the sun, it's that it flipped over 180 from someone live time looking at the same thing, you know, on the other latitude. And like, yeah, that's pretty crazy. And it did seem to match like very closely. Of course, it gets to where like people aren't getting the best shots at the exact same time, but it's very similar. And so now it's like now you're flirting with like, okay, it's almost this place's design where if you go look at that, it looks like a globe. And if you just hone in on that one thing, then it seems like very cut and dry which side you should be on. But like that is weird to me. Like, why would I do that? If I had a gone and done that in 2016, then who knows? And maybe I would have stopped my pursuit. I would like to think I wouldn't have, but like maybe I would have, but I didn't, right? Like I compiled, 7, 8 years of information before I did that. And this is what was confusing about Jaron's response is he just like memory wiped like 8 years and then just
Right.
kind of defaulted to the other answers that are for sure not
He
satisfactory.
went full Occam razor. He went full Occam razor on
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's why people have beef with
Hey,
him.
it takes a lot of hey, I got to give it to you. It takes a lot of courage to take the position. I think it's good for all of us because we all have to go out and to argue and to talk about these points. We have to do a lot of relearning of things and learning of things that we didn't know before. And we can gang on you big time. Hey, what about the ships and the bridges and our measurements and laser tests? And you can throw as many of those back at us too. Well, we did a laser test too, and this is what we saw, and this is. So you have a lot of things that you've tested. I think there's a lot more. I think you're going against the 50,000 pound behemoth, but you're putting up a good fight, and you're not saying I quit yet. So good for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest, man. Where I'm at right now, um, is like you can make that same argument for either side. Like, everything is being done as if to convince you that the other is true, and like on like an immediate scale, it's flat. And then or just on the ground altogether, not even an immediate scale. And then for most of the sky, right, it maps to the assumption of a globe. But again, like if the globe was made from that assumption, then it would have to match. I don't know. So like that's kind of where I am. I'm perfectly content there. I think that more people are uncomfortable with that than I am. So they're like projecting onto me. Like that's what's actually happening. Like people were they either like identify with the model and reify to the same thing that was the problem in the first place or whatever it is, or like they just kind of were like relying on me to formulate their thoughts. So when I came back and then took a break, they're like, oh my god, they freaked out, whatever it is. But like I don't know, I'm pretty comfortable with the situation. Like my position for multiple years now has been like the realm is way more complicated and complex than people like to claim. And like are we going to really believe this is the first time in human history that the side that was super arrogant and swore they knew how everything worked is actually right? Because that's what this would be. This would be the first time in history. And now we're making more bold claims than ever. Now we're making claims about lights that we have no access to that people claim are like inconceivable distances away. I mean, are you kidding me? So, yeah, I don't know, man. I will say this. I'll say this. I think that discussion is almost exhausted. Like, I'm not interested in fully modeling every single conceivable phenomena on a plane because, like, my understanding right now is that we can't. And um,
Well,
I'm much more interested in like a more of a macro setting or like a zoomed out setting where like gravity isn't actually real and everything's electromagnetic and there's an ether and we're in the center of the universe and everything's moving around us in a torus field and all the galaxy clusters and all that match exactly what you see with magnetism. And it's like that's like a much more freeing um perspective that I would like gun to my head wouldn't even hesitate to say is more accurate, and it would literally change all of humanity. It brings in the we're special. It's like okay, to boil it down real simple here, what I'm saying is like if I set flat aside for just a sec, like not moving in the center, both sides could come agree like, oh wow, this place is super, super special. And that's like the most important thing. If this place is super, super special and couldn't just be random and chaotic, then it was placed here intelligently and therefore has a purpose, has a meaning, something deeper than the material. And that's kind of been my objective the whole time.
Yeah, so why isn't a geocentric ball just the best answer then?
I don't. The geocentric ball doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like the stationary ball has other problems. Like, I guess you could say it's just sitting there. I mean, you could probably try to propose ideas of how it's just sitting there, but my answer would be specifically that it has issues with the with like the physical measurements, like the microwave thing. Like if the Earth is actually a ball of that size, then how do we explain like the microwave transmissions? And um, like also really high frequency radio transmissions. But I like the microwave because the military uses it and it's like perfectly accurate every time. So any excuse that claims like when the conditions are just right, like can't be true. And that's really the only one I've ever found or heard. We can't really say the Earth is way bigger. And we say the Earth's a way bigger ball, which you can have a way bigger ball and explain the 24-hour sun, right? For sure. Because regardless of the size of the ball, obviously you're going to have a 24-hour sun on either side of it. But that brings in way, way more problems. You know what I mean? Like if it's just a way bigger ball, then the way we map the sky out was still wrong, and we're going to have to incorporate perspective and a curved surface. So
You
we're
know,
going to
it's
have to
funny.
have like curved visual space plus a curved ground.
You know, it's funny. I always wondered why you never use the argument I always put up, the GeoEight and geodesics and things, because like I always talk about the flat spot, and which could be even worse, and they could be concave down in Indian Ocean area. You could say anything we measure up here, since we all admit that there's geodetic variances, that could account for why there's curvature. And then to your point, the surface of this thing that we call Earth is maybe it's not flat. Maybe it has these curvature over thousands of miles type of, and that's why we see the measurements we've made. You could use that argument as well, right? We'll never, we could always be right. In the end, there's going to be one answer that we maybe can't find out just from local measurements. I guess that's what my point is. If we're being honest.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, like for example, with the microwaves, like those are used like all over the world.
Yeah, and they
So
have reasons for why they work. They don't have to be on these like specifically, ideal conditions. Somewhat ideal. They have to have some temperature aversion, but there's radio waves that bounce off the, you know, above the stratosphere, and
Actually, that's not true, Zanick. That's
What's
not
not?
true.
Yeah.
They call it anomalous propagation for a reason. It's because
Right.
it doesn't actually fit the standard model of microwave. It goes beyond the horizon it should be achieving. So
Right,
that's
and they
why
don't
they
use it
call
all
it
the
that.
time. They probably don't use it all the time when that's not
they
there.
say, well, the military paper says it's 99% reliable.
Then maybe that's not true then.
Why
But
would they call it
Right.
anomalous then?
well,
I mean,
we're in
dude,
Santa
my
Barbara.
position, you know how you agree we can destroy stuff with microwaves?
Hold on. Well, not really, but I mean you can, but it's not that
What?
easy. I know how, because I used to deal with some microwave towers and things when we were doing communication through microwave, but that's a whole different story. But what I'm saying is that we have days like Santa Barbara, we can see the Channel Islands, we can see these oil rigs, and they're at eye level. They're above eye level actually, and
All right,
we
let's
know.
not change the subject.
I know, but it's just an example. So we know the conditions can change these anomalous observations.
Okay. But like most importantly, right? Microwaves are like they're like weapon grade microwave, bro. And let's take the same idea of the microwave, but let's envision like a super powerful laser that's gonna like burn a hole through, concrete or whatever it shoots at. If I took that super coherent, powerful beam and I'm like 5 feet above the ground and I grab it with both handles and I just start shooting it like a weapon, right? And I get this like super space beam or whatever, this crazy strong laser beam, and it just shoots straight parallel to the ground. Very simply, dude, the Earth being a ball blocks it. You can only use that weapon for so far, but like if it goes way further than that and then burns through a freaking concrete block, like okay, well there just was nothing blocking it because if something was blocking it, we
Well,
would have seen
why
a kinetic interaction.
couldn't it have been refracted? Why wouldn't it be refracted if the whole medium of this is being transferred through is can be subject to bending light up or down based on a differential version of Snell's law? I mean, that seems
Oh,
kind of
it's such a high frequency, we know it wouldn't refract like that.
whoa. That's not true. Their
Like
frequency.
why do you think that they have to claim a temperature inversion layer
Because of
if they could just say refraction?
Well, this is used for you're talking about communications, not using it as a weapon or transferring energy.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a little different scenario. The wider beam.
Slightly different, yeah, because it's a high
Well,
frequency.
it's
So like,
quite a bit different as far as microwaves go. But yeah, I know what your point is, but I'm saying that is going through this atmospheric ducting and it's bouncing up and down in this temperature inversion where the atmosphere is. I know I forgot it. We had a
I mean, that
discussion.
sounds cool, right? Like it in theory makes sense. Like I shoot the microwave out, and of course it's going to start going towards space because the ground is dropping below it. But there's just this layer in the air, right, that forces it to bounce back down, and so then it just bounces up and down, up and down, up and down, trap in this little corridor,
Right.
like this little hallway. And the reason that it has the top of the hallway is because the temperatures that are typically there invert, right? And so it creates like this little ducting zone, and therefore the beam can't get out of it. And then, of course, that ducting zone, being part of the atmosphere, wraps around the ball naturally. So as the ball bounces up and down within that corridor, it's naturally wrapping around the ball. And that's a stillman, right? So, like, okay, cool, right?
Well,
But in reality, dude, like that temperature inversion layer is almost never seen, and when it is seen, it's only seen in like small areas. It's never seen over like long
then you should be able.
stretches.
Then what is it? What is the professional and the scientific explanation for it being 90%, 99% accurate or 90% possible when these conditions are only 10% of the time or something? There's got to be.
I don't know.
I'm sure there's an explanation for that. We could.
Yeah, it's called anomalies. Anomalous propagation. It's literally just the excuse, explain away. We don't know why it works. It just fucking works. And
And let's
all
give an
this
example.
ducting
Why?
all this ducking
Sorry.
stuff you're talking about too. Like this is they
What,
just call it that. It works with other
would you
frequencies and
say
other
all this
bands.
what stuff?
Hold on,
What'd
hold
you
on,
say?
hold on.
No,
But
I
with
didn't. I heard what you
microwave,
said.
with
What did you
microwave,
say?
it's just theoretical because
You
they
said
use microwave to look at space. There's
what
a
did you
reason for
say?
that.
Documentary
I
stuff?
Because
What
said
did you say?
ducting.
My
ducting, this
God, you
ducting
again.
stuff is it's hypothetical for microwave. The other stuff, yes, it's more relevant, but with microwave, they use this to look at space. So it's specifically being used because it doesn't get caught up around the horizon. That's why they use it. Okay. So the fact that they just, post hoc figure out like, okay, well, we're just going to call it anomalous propagation. There's no other application for it though. It's not a realized model. They just make it up. They have to.
Well, okay. What do you think about ham radio operators? I mean, how do you think
Wait,
that?
because that's it. We're not going to swap over to that.
Well, that's
Dude,
separate.
No, I mean,
because here's the question about this one. Wait, before we just swap over, it's a
I'm not
weird
swapping. I want to
instinct
stay on
that you
ducting.
have.
I agree.
Okay.
Just
Well, we'll just talk about this one though, right? Like, this is what I don't get. How can someone see that, right? And if that's like a clear problem, right? Well, how can you then come to me and act like I'm insane because I don't just abandon the position that it's a plane that it's moving over, right? Like, no, I think you're crazy for just conveniently omitting that from existence because you saw the sign. You know what I mean? Like to me, that's weird. And another point I want to make is the reason something like this would happen normally, like a company wouldn't even get started if it proposed something like that. Right? Because we're like, well, that would never work. It only work like on rare random times that the temperatures invert or whatever. Like they would never even get funding. They can never even get venture capital funding for that. Like no one would be invested. No one would be on the board. No one would want equity. No one would purchase it. It wouldn't even become a thing. But when it comes to the military, where they just get this like massive amount of funding to do, they don't care about anything other than what works. They don't care about like some type of cosmological bias. They don't care about what supposedly will or won't work. If something works and it gives them a tactical military advantage, they're going to use it. You know what I mean? And when it works and they put it in play, it has to work reliably because they got to kill bad guys. They can't let bad guys kill them or whatever, which really we're normally the bad guy, but who cares? So like you get my point. Like when it comes down to the military, when it comes down to actual action, like practical need, when it comes down to like large swaths of money and tactical like military positioning, all of a sudden no one cares about these little excuses that people say on Discord or these like theories that people come up with or like none of that matters. And what do you think if that's public knowledge, and only kind of, by the way, like a lot of the microwave stuff in the military, it's hard to it's classified, bro. Imagine what they may have,
Radars and
right?
shit.
I like to respond when you have
Imagine what they may have. Imagine what they may have that we wouldn't know. Can we agree that if the U.S. military discovered something that was inconsistent with the globe, but worked amazingly, assuming it's flat, that they would just keep that to themselves classified, and they may have the best FE proof known to man, and we'll never know?
Yeah. True. I agree. And that's what we've talked about the UFO thing, and there's a lot of these admirals and generals that are coming out with firsthand information about alien technologies that we're trying to, keep. The president can't even be privy to because he can't tell us about it. He's not being informed because if it gets in the hands of our enemies, then it'll be like this, the same thing happened with us having nuclear bombs, over 100 years ago. But here's the thing. So we talk about anomalous. Who said it? They're anomalous. That was mentioned by someone. Was that Bear? Who said that? In the audience here.
No, that was me. That was me. But yes, it's called anomalous propagation.
Okay. The reason it's called anomalous, it doesn't mean that it's not. It's not. That doesn't mean that it's rare. It just means that it's not common. It's not. It is common.
No. It's that they literally do not have a model for it.
Can I finish?
Wait, let him finish. Let him finish.
Let me finish. Yeah.
Bring it back from the top. Bring it back from the top.
Hold on. Anomalous implies that it's rare, like you said, but it's not rare.
Wait, you just said the opposite. Okay.
I went again because I misspoke. Don't rub my nose in it, all right? I'm not a dog.
Okay. Anomalous doesn't mean that it's rare.
Implies that it's rare, right? Kind of implies that it's kind of anomalous. Only happens every so often.
No. Has nothing to do with rarity.
Well, it kind of
anomalous.
Well, I'm saying it applies.
What would be an anomaly? Okay, look, if
anomaly, like something rather not that is conforming to a standard atmospheric model, for example. Now, let me just finish the thought, and you understand what I'm saying. Because if you keep on jumping in, it's going to take twice as long. You know what I'm saying?
You just okay. I can go ahead. Go ahead. I can laugh.
Thank you. I know it's funny. I can. Don't worry about it. So it's very common and predictable, and it said it depends on the type of atmosphere conditions you have, and it can happen over the ocean and evaporative ducts. I'll read this part here. It says, over open ocean, evaporative ducts caused by water vapor are nearly permanent, occurring to 90 to 95% of the time. And that's why naval radars use it all the time for over-the-horizon detection. Boom, that's one. Coastal regions, surface and elevated ducts are frequent, occurring 47% of the time in some areas, like South China or Southern California. It's a daily, like what I said about the oil rigs over by Santa Barbara. Inland temperature zones, here much rarer. So over inland temperature zones, much rarer, 5 or 12% of the time. In these areas, it's truly an anomaly, meaning kind of rare. But it means, in one sense, that typically only happens during clear summer nights with rapid cooling. So 99% of the time, over water and over the oceans and things, it's 95% of the time it's there. That's why they can use it. So even though it's anomalous, the definition you found and you said is anomalous, it doesn't mean that it's rare. That was my point. Thank you for the floor, by the way.
You actually finished by kind of making the same point.
Well, the original point was true. Anomalous implies rare, but it's not rare. It happens all the time. And the reason why it happens all the time is because these conditions.
It sounds like a you problem. I wasn't assuming that. Was anyone else assuming rare by the definition of anomaly?
Yeah, you said
no, but apparently anomaly.
No, it's not. Dude, it doesn't mean intrinsically it's rare. It just means that it's outside. It's outside the understanding of whoever is trying to understand it. That's all it means.
So let's put it in very simple terms. Typically, the scientism cultists would immediately throw it out, right? Because it doesn't conform to their presuppositions and preferred outcome and belief system. But in this situation, the usability of it is so valuable that they don't care, and they're just going to call it an anomaly.
No, they call it an anomaly because it doesn't conform to standard atmospheric conditions overall over the globe. But it's not rare. It is anomalous because it implies rare. You can think he used it in the context of being rare, like, hey, we depend on it. We have to be able to
hit God, it's just like
Let me just finish. Hold on. But it's actually common and predictable. Can we at least agree to that? Maybe everybody misunderstood it, or maybe
no. I don't agree that
you don't think it's common and predictable. So you don't think it's common and predictable. Okay.
Well, I'm going to answer you. Oh my God, you like live in your own world, then.
No, I'm not. Over open ocean.
What did I say? What are you responding to right now?
Because you said I don't agree that it's common, and I just said over open ocean, evaporative ducts caused by water vapor are nearly permanent, occurring up to 90
What is
to
going on?
95% of the time. That's
Okay.
why nature.
Okay. Anyway, like, no, I don't agree that a temperature inversion layer is common. You know, it's not.
So you disagree with the actual physics. Okay, that's your choice.
So you're saying that microwaves are only shot over the ocean for starters, and secondly, you're saying that the ocean always had the temperature inversion layer. So
over long
like,
distances, yeah, we don't see a lot of long distance microwave transmissions over land.
wait, time out. First of all, wrong, right? Because sometimes they use mountains, and even with the mountain accounting for curvature, it shouldn't go as far as it does. And actually, when I say sometimes, I mean the vast majority of the time, because if you're trying to use a microwave for a military, why are you going to shoot it over the ocean?
Well,
How far do you think the microwaves go exactly?
Usually they're looking at boats or looking at things that are, you're communicating with someone over oceans, over long distances, thousands of miles, 100 miles, 200
Is that
miles
what
away.
they do? Is that what they do? They use
miles.
microwaves. Wait, time out. You think they use the microwaves to communicate with boats hundreds of miles away?
To detect bad guys, to detect or to communicate. Yes.
No, you're making stuff up, and it's okay, but
I'm not
just
making
stop.
things up. What are you talking? You don't think they use microwave communication?
I think you just made all that up.
No, I'm not making it up. I know for a fact they do use it for
Okay,
communication.
let me say this. Let me rephrase.
My
I
applications
know
might be a
for a
little bit raw, but
fact that you made all that up.
okay, go
Is that
ahead.
better? You made
You
it
know
up, bro. It's okay. Yeah.
You know for a fact they made it all up. No.
Yes, dude. Yes.
You
You want
have
to drop some
knowledge of something, how is
documents?
it being made up?
Drop some
I would-
documents that the microwave transmissions were referencing that have way too high of a frequency to actually traverse the distances that they do based on the geometric limitations of the globe. Model prediction are used primarily over oceans for hundreds of miles to detect where boats are.
Sounds like you're reading it off a book. Are you?
Well, I'm literally putting together a microphone right now.
Okay.
Microwaves to detect boats over the ocean, that's called radar. It existed like 80 years ago.
Yeah. Was that my point or not?
I may have misunderstood
Like,
your point.
well, let me repeat it, right? We're talking about a specific system that the military uses that has very high frequencies. And the documents that I read, which I mean, I know Zanick's not reading, right? Like, they almost were always talking about land use. And so I'm not saying that they don't use it over the ocean. Like, why would they use microwaves instead of radio waves over the ocean?
Microwaves are a type of radio wave.
Yeah. Thanks for the pedantic. If they were identical things, they wouldn't have different
You asked me a
names,
question.
right?
Let
Like,
him
One's a
respond to
subset of the other. Microwaves are a type of radio wave.
You asked him a question. Let him respond to it.
No, he interjected to correct me that they were the same thing, right? Like, yes, I'm well aware they're both light and they're just based on different frequencies, right?
No,
But
he said radar. He actually was
what? No, he just jumped in and said microwaves are radio waves. Okay, yeah, okay, cool. Pedantic, but cool. Like, I don't understand the point there. Like,
the radar. I heard.
no, he didn't.
Did
He
say
said
that?
microwave. He said microwaves are radio waves. Okay,
I think
which technically is correct, of course. But like, when I'm using both of the terms, it's obviously so that we can have a discussion where we are distinguishing between the two frequency ranges, which is why they have the titles they do. Okay, so I'm asking, like, if they were trying to accomplish like long distance radar, why would we use microwaves instead of radio waves? We wouldn't, right? Because microwaves have a higher attenuation rate.
If I recall, the shorter frequency or shorter wavelength ones, the microwaves, have less problems with refraction. They obviously you can get more accurate readings with a shorter wavelength because the most accurate you can get is to I think
Well,
half a
I agree with
wavelength.
that. I agree with
It's
that,
not
right? Like,
fractional in this case.
yeah. That's why
I can't
microwaves are
remember what the reason
preferable.
was, because I know that there was. Oh, maybe it was that they could get higher power out of the shorter wavelengths. I think I recall the Captain
That's
Magnetrons
true as well.
in World War II
Yeah.
era. They were getting better power density out of shorter wavelengths, so they could get a higher, more powerful radar emitter by going to shorter wavelengths.
Sure. But what's the downside to the microwaves?
I can't remember all the details of the atmospherics. You say it's more attenuated. That sounds plausible.
Yeah. So they have like a much higher rate of attenuation, right? And then whatever. So like they interact with even like water molecules in the air and all that, and they attenuate much at a much faster rate. And so microwaves are not really being invoked based on like the totality of distance per se. It's just that the distance is too great. And so their primary use case is not like immense distances. Like if we need to know where something is super, super far away, we don't use microwaves usually, right? Because the radio waves can go way further because they don't attenuate. Now, if something is in a specific range, if it's in the range of a microwave, we would always prefer to use a microwave because of some of the reasons that you said, and just like the coherency and like crisp nature of the signal, which you pretty much
Yeah.
said, right? Like, yeah. So, but that's not really the point. The point is just like it's not just over the ocean, but at least he's trying here. And let me, like, am I still meaning here
There's
when I
a reason
say
why
that
you
you're claiming you're claiming the reason that it's able to be used with such a reliability is because it's predominantly used over the ocean, and the ocean typically has conditions that are being called anomalous, although apparently not anomalous because the air conditions over the ocean create a temperature inversion layer typically.
But the other thing I was going to mention, you said, what are the downsides? And you had a good point there. There are downsides to it, and I think he was actually mentioning a couple before I sound like you kind of cut him off. But yeah, it's more easily absorbed by water and oxygen and the atmosphere and this kind of stuff. So rain. It's not good in rain. Absorbed by the atmosphere, and basically that's kind of one of the downsides for it using these short, but it's also good for very high resolution pictures and images and things if you're trying to get that kind of communications, and of course of this atmospheric ducting that it can actually take advantage of. I mean, that's why
Okay.
they don't standardize on it for everything. There's
Okay.
there's uses for it, right?
Okay.
Do you
So
agree? Does
so
that seem like it's too far fetched?
mm, no, I think your overall claim is too far fetched, right? So like just to clarify, you're claiming that typically there's a temperature inversion layer over the ocean, like reliably so?
It doesn't have to be a temperature inversion. It could be just the fact that there's evaporation over with the amount of water vapor that's in the atmosphere, and then it rises, and
What?
that happens in the upper atmosphere. This area, this ducting area, can be caused by a couple different things.
No, it needs to be a temperature inversion layer though. Because like water particles are just going to cause it to scatter.
Correct. I agree. No, water vapor, not water.
Oh my gosh, there's this one over here.
Water vapor is going to be just a less dense atmosphere.
All right, the other guy, your mic's a little muffled and low, by the way. We're not like trying to trample you.
So they got now. I don't know if evaporation duct is going to be a temperature inversion, but it's caused by this rapid humidity decrease above the surface. And
So I can only speak for myself. Zanick might be trying to trample you. I don't know.
No, I didn't hear anybody talking. Sorry, there was.
I guess the question goes, if we always have line of sight because we live on a flat Earth, why do they even bother with undersea cables, right? They just
We
use
don't
line of
always have
sight
line of sight.
transmission.
Well, okay, if you were going to be a flat earther and answer that, what would you say?
Because the birds are drones and they're always shorting out the wires when they land on them, so we got to get something protected underwater.
Oh, so you're not super bright? Okay, anyone else? Because if you can't still man or come up with like intellectual responses to the
Yeah, I
alternative
mean, I
position,
guess one of the things would be it's easier to mess with the signal if you want to jam it as like an enemy nation state or something. It'd be easier to fuck with the signal so that you could break down global communication.
Oh, okay. I would say something like, well, yeah, even though we may have line of sight, right, we still have other variables such as interference, such as scattering and attenuation, the turbidity of the atmosphere. We also have topographical obstructions, right? So if I need to go to a really high mountain to even kind of propose this idea of infinite line of sight, which we are doing. And beyond that, right, when we talk about microwaves, we just talk about how they have a higher rate of attenuation, but conveniently, we can actually take a radio wave of a really high frequency, shoot it in a specific direction as though it's a line of sight, and what do you know? It reaches its target.
based on the ducting. It doesn't have to be temperature. It could be just anything that changes the refractive index of the atmosphere. Is what, and you would agree to that because that's what it all means. It all boils down to the differential version of Snell's law, and that is primarily going through a differential medium at a certain angle of incidence. Period.
Wait, time out. So, like, let's just make
temperature-
sure everyone understands what's going on here. Okay, this is what happened in the world. Both were unexpected when they were originally discovered, going all the way back to like, what is it, 1901? Marconi.
Marconi, yeah.
Yeah, 1901. So Marconi, we're going to shoot these
UH.
radio waves and we're going to shoot them over the ocean. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to aim straight at a tower 2,000 miles away. Everyone's like, bro, you're retarded. That's not going to work at all. It's going to get blocked at like 200 miles, bro. Like the earth is going to block it. He's like, oh, I'm just going to try it anyway. And he did it and they received it the first
UHF?
time.
What kind of radio waves? Like a ham radio operator type, those kind of VHS, UHF, that type of radio waves.
Yeah.
Okay, not microwaves, but that's how they found it. Yeah, they found it. Wow, we can do all sorts of crazy things. It's actually going around the Earth now. Why is it doing that?
To be clear, this is a lot more complicated. It's a lot more complicated than we're talking about here. Whenever there's this atmospheric ducting, the signal itself carries a very unique fingerprint. It's not like a solid signal, right? It has the fingerprint of the fact that it is being ducted through the atmosphere.
Hold
Not
on.
only that, the propagation path at receiving stations that are suddenly able to hear the signal will correspond with the weather conditions that are allowing it to happen.
Guys, Witsit's literally addressing this.
It doesn't behave like a normal, sustained, like line of sight signal. It behaves very differently.
Dude, you guys have to listen, man. Like, it can't be microwave, Zanick, because they break through the ionosphere. Back when Marconi did this, that was the whole excuse. So let Witsit finish.
So Marconi was actually using a pretty
different energy,
low frequency, right? So
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So I think the way it worked with Marconi was it refracted because the wavelength was so big that the atmosphere was like a useful medium for refraction.
No. So Marconi's transmission is what led to the quote unquote discovery of the ionosphere by Oliver Heaviside, who was like a genius, right? He was for sure a genius in the field of electrical field theory, right? But he proposed this idea, which was basically that if you had an area in the sky that had such a high frequency that it was a higher frequency than the signal you were sending, then once it reached that area, it wouldn't be able to keep going. It would actually reflect back. So in theory, if you shot it over the earth and it was a ball, right? Part of the signal will get blocked by the earth, but the top half of it, as it diverges, is going to go out towards space, is going to hit this area up there. And if it has a high frequency, it'll reflect the signal back down, right? And so that's literally what led to the discovery, quote unquote, because it was actually a theory that was proposed. It wasn't a discovery. Anyway, so their official claim it's skywave propagation, ionospheric propagation. And that's cool, whatever. Since then, we've started shooting way higher frequencies and, they go vast distances on the earth. And you can, in fact, just point to a place as if it was straight ahead of you, as if the earth were flat, and it is going to get to its location. And it doesn't get to its location every time. And no, that's not a falsification that it is a plane because we have all kinds of things. We have all kinds of interference and stuff like that, obstructions, whatever. Okay. But like this is where that gets complicated. Right. These are the strongest falsifications on the globe here, in my opinion. Like microwaves and radio waves are a huge problem for you guys. What they claim the ionosphere has a certain frequency. And when a signal goes higher than that frequency, it should penetrate through it, right?
Say it one more time.
If we're using the basic principle that like a frequency, a radio wave, right, shot at say like ionized like plasma or something with a frequency higher than it, then it can't penetrate it and it'll reflect back, which is a very real phenomenon. We can do it in the lab and all that, right?
Frequency higher than
like
plasma.
50 megahertz is the upper limit for ionosphere bounce.
Yeah.
And what are microwaves? What range?
Regis was talking about us if this is true and we're using them to penetrate through out of the ionosphere. How does this even work? Well, it has to do with the type of conditions and the angles at which it's being sent into the atmosphere. So it takes advantage of these ducting. These
Okay,
ducting
okay.
No,
Let's try to
that
keep
wasn't
this
my
like
point. But
coherent. Like, yeah, he brought up microwaves, and he's basically making the point that it's much higher than 50 megahertz, right? But like even radio waves that can be higher than 50 megahertz, and they're shot all the time, and they're shot great distances all the time successfully, right? Like if you actually look at the world record, it's like insane numbers. So if like the absolute cutoff of the ionosphere is 50 megahertz, and they really say it's like a range of like 30 to 50, right? And they'll say like normally they'll say, of course, the average being 40 there, right? Like the median. So 40 megahertz, 50 being like the absolute max. Well, if I that means if I shoot something 51 megahertz, it should go through it. So if I shoot something 100 megahertz, it should definitely go through it, right?
I mean, these are, with RF stuff,
You're
right?
just
There's
going to
always
get the
wiggle
actual
room in there, but
arc system. Instead of going through it,
What?
you're just going to bubble it out and then create a charge inside of it. And then when it collapses back down, they can redirect that charge.
What? It should go through it.
Isn't that the same technology they're using with HARP though? And HARP's not saying it's going through it. HARP's saying it's going to the ionosphere and then bubbling it outward. And as it bubbles outwards, it builds up a charge inside that expanded area that when it collapses, they can redirect that charge.
Well, then they wouldn't be claiming it was much higher frequency than the ionosphere. Which they don't, by the way. I mean, HARP is a very low frequency. Like I want to say it's like under 20 megahertz. So that kind of makes sense, you know.
I mean, the question would be, like, for example, at the lower frequencies where you do get the ionospheric reflections, like, for example, I have a watch that uses the atomic radio signal from Colorado, right? I can't receive that during the day. There's no signal, but at nighttime, um, that's when you get the most ionospheric reflection. I do pick up the signal, but that transmitter has not changed in its power output, right? It's transmitting at the same rate 24/7. And the question would
Okay.
be, if we're on a flat Earth, why is that signal changing throughout the day?
What? Well, before we deflect, right? Like, can we just kind of like address the uncomfortable part of it here? Like, everyone here knows now, right, that like we only proposed the idea of the ionosphere because someone assumed the Earth was flat, effectively, you know, and shot a transmission over the Atlantic Ocean, and using line of sight assumption alone, they successfully received the transmission over 2,000 miles away, first attempt, when it was supposed to be blocked by the Earth curve, and all of its detractors said it would be under 200 miles. Since then, which that was a much lower frequency, since then we've progressed, right? And we have like the American Radio Relay League that has like world records, like distance records, right? And this is where we start having our cake and eat it too. Like, oh, we bounce radio waves off the moon. Okay, how do you do that? Well, we just send a frequency that's high enough to go through the ionosphere. Okay, cool. Like what? You know, it really varies, like between 70 and 100 megahertz or whatever. Like, okay, cool. And then we turn around and say that like 100 megahertz bounces off the ionosphere when it goes too far for the Earth to be a ball. Like, I don't understand. But like, if I go through the American Radio Relay League, and I just looked it up. I have the PDF here. I'll drop it. These are the world records, right? And like it's they literally only even compile the world records above 50 megahertz. So above the ionosphere, um, like typically agreed upon like highest frequency. And so we come here, we have distances ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 kilometers. Here's 5,100 kilometers. Okay, and then here are the megahertz, right? The megahertz, 144 megahertz. The record is 3,600 kilometers. And if I come down, no, actually, it's way higher. It's whoa. There's 6,200. So we have a 6,200 kilometer signal at 144 megahertz. That right there's a problem. Now we're going to keep going. 222, we got them, 5,900, 5,700. Okay. 432 megahertz. 432 megahertz. We have 4,000 kilometers. So we are seeing that as it gets a little higher, like they're not going as far, but only by like 1,000 kilometers. They're still going like crazy distances, but it kind of makes sense, right? We know there's like a proportionate relationship with attenuation. We got 1,200 megahertz. We got 4,100, 2,300 megahertz. We got 4,000. So you guys get the point. 3,400 megahertz, 3,456 megahertz. We got 4,000. 5,760 megahertz, 4,000, 3,982. 10 gigahertz, 10 gigahertz, bro. 10
But
gigahertz.
you
We
can get
got,
tropospheric ducting up to 300 gigahertz, so there's no surprises there.
that's convenient. So it's not the ionosphere.
Here's the thing, though, Witsit. Like when this stuff was first being discovered in the early 19th or 20th century, early 1900s, they were able to do experiments where they would send two different frequencies, one via ground wave, one via skywave, and then study the interference patterns and arrival time. And they were even able to calculate what was the altitude that the signal was bouncing off of up and down at various receivers across the path. They were able to then calculate roughly where that ionospheric bounce was occurring. So there was definitely, like I said, there is a
Wait,
fingerprint to that signal that shows that there is an ionospheric bounce that's happening in the case of the ionospheric bouncing, right? Like, and then, like I said, the same for when there's a tropospheric, tropospheric ducting that's refracting the high frequency, microwave
Let's think
around
about
it.
this logically. If there was no ionosphere and I shot a radio transmission like over the ground, right? We agree that there would be many things that would eventually stop it. Like it would attenuate, it would scatter, it could go across a thunderstorm, it could go, it could keep getting scattered by different, like if it's raining somewhere, then you're cooked, right? Like it'll hurt the signal. If you run into like mountains or whatever, right? Like we have topographical obstruction, we have electronic obstruction, all these things. And then on a flat Earth, just like on a globe Earth, if I shoot a signal out, it immediately starts to diverge. So like if the bottom parts of it are being blocked, then okay. And then the tops, what happens is it diffracts. So it fills in behind the block and fills in behind the block, but it just starts to die out more and more, right? And so even with just like topographical obstruction, you would have like little skip zones. And furthermore, right, of course, an ionosphere isn't even exclusive to a globe, right? So even if we were to just set that aside and assume that under 50 megahertz, radio waves are bouncing off ionosphere, because like if they have receivers set up all throughout it and they're just receiving a signal, well, they can assume that we know it must be bouncing off the ionosphere because the globe Earth would block it far before this receiver. So if we assume that and then we do the math, all they were looking at is, okay, we received a signal. Therefore, it would have got blocked here and had to go at this angle. And for it to get here, right, for it to come back down at this distance, it would have had to go no higher than this height. So it's just like a reverse calculation, right? Which would be accurate if the assumption is true. That's not proof of anything. Like if I set if I was going to send something 3,000 miles and then I have a receiver every 500 miles, and then the first receiver, or say the 1,000-mile receiver receives a signal, but the globe Earth math would say it's going to get blocked at like 300 miles. Well, then I'm going to have to do the math where the ionosphere is going to have to be shallow enough that it was able to bounce back and get to me within just 1,000 miles or within just 500 miles or whatever it is. So then you're going to calculate the height of the ionosphere based on that. Because, of course, in order for this to be true, the ionosphere height and altitude has to vary all the time because the signals vary all the time. Right?
Yeah, there's another thing I need to add in just for a moment, is that if the Earth was a globe and Marconi just got lucky, it would be like playing a giant game of billiards where he did a bank shot and just got it perfect.
Bank shot off what, dude? Something that they had to invent later?
No, okay. What?
A bank shot off the sky?
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be condescending, but yes, that is what a bank shot is. Off
Yeah,
of a
but he's
rail.
making he was making the point that they just ad hoc made it up.
Yeah, they just created the ionosphere out of nowhere to explain that. You figure early 1900s, Muggelson Morley results, you figure someone would have come across this mentally and figured out something isn't right, but whatever.
Well, I don't think you're looking at things being a bank shot off the ionosphere, but it's something where things are bouncing off. There is an angle, and refraction acts like basically a bank shot. Not so many words.
Okay, so
yeah, but the
okay.
beam width is like hundreds of potentially thousands of miles wide. It's not like a billiard ball
Right.
that travels a
Right.
narrow path.
You have a frequency of light. You have a differential medium. You have an angle of incidence. You'll have a bank shot, and there's an angle for every.
Okay, so it bounced off of this place that we call the ionosphere, and it got from, I think, Nova Scotia to London, and it just happened to get there.
Yep.
Wow.
So, I
When you
mean,
get
this
some
is
of
just
this
another
tropospheric
example.
ducting, for example, you could have a signal that's coming from Asia that's reaching all the way from Oregon to Baja, Mexico, right?
And
That's like
everybody around there.
thousands
Yeah.
of miles of width is
Wide.
picking up the same signal.
Yeah.
So it's a little to call it a bank shot. It would be like, oh, it just hit my, it bounced off the ionosphere and it hit my house in San Francisco, but my neighbor couldn't pick up the signal. It just
Yeah,
hit my house perfectly.
Yeah, we're not doing the retroreflectors off the moon where we're getting one photon back. It's like the entire, West Coast gets the signal from Asia.
In 1901, roughly, that's when they say that Marconi had done that. Now, can we do it again today in a very, very smaller way with maybe aiming up a radio tower, or sorry, some sort of system to transmit the signal at about an 89-degree angle, and then just using basic trig, finding out exactly where it's going to land? Would that work?
I mean,
Radio
define
wave,
land, though.
yeah, radio wave, depending especially on the type of, if you're using like an isotropic radiator or something, that radio wave is not going to be some laser beam that you're reflecting with mirrors, right? It's going to virtually take all paths.
It's not like a
Yeah,
lightning.
To the
diffraction
point
and
of
stuff.
attenuation, right? To the point of attenuation, right? And then you can get areas where you have dead zones where it's being reflected away from a area, so you might have a dead zone in a certain spot. But
Scattering, all that. Yeah.
radio waves, I mean, radio waves they're like black magic in terms of how they work, in terms of that, like a lot of their behavior is unpredictable, right? Because they're so prone to the conditions.
I do apologize. Austin was taking the helm on this one. I did interject for a moment, but either way, I
No,
just
you're
had
all
to say
good. I
that
mean,
because it's just a bunch of nonsense when people say this. So
well, I want to say that you just got them to just say like a magic. I mean, let's just remember that it's like magic because there are so many varying conditions that can intercept it and deflect it. And okay, so then your initial question, you finally accidentally provided the obvious answer to your initial question, right? When you're like, well, if the Earth actually was flat, then why can't we just use line of sight to shoot everything everywhere? And what I want to know is if the ionosphere is reflecting these high frequency waves, right? Because we're going over 50. The world record is only over 50. What is causing the frequencies or the radio waves at that high frequency to bounce back if they actually are that much higher than the ionosphere?
What are
Because
we
it would go
talking
right
about
through
here?
it.
Are we talking about tropospheric ducting? Are we talking about ionosphere skywave
You're
propagation? What are we talking
you're
about?
asking me. I mean, like, what you tell me?
Yeah, there's a
Like,
variety of
so,
mechanisms that
but how do they
can
know which one did it?
reflect.
How do they know which one? How do they know which one did it?
Well, for example, with the tropospheric ducting, the conditions that allow for it can be predicted, where they know that it could be possible to send a signal, and then and those have been tested time and time eternal
What are
over the
those
last 100
conditions?
years.
What are those conditions?
Let's see.
Okay,
Under tropospheric
because
ducting,
that's not how it's actually done, from my understanding. Like, I'm not saying there is no like claims of that, but it's really as simple as over a certain frequency. Usually, it has to be a certain thing, but it is true that within a specific frequency range, right? They have like a conglomerate of claims, right? And it's well, it's even on this list. I'll give you guys your answers here.
like here it says, tropospheric ducting occurs during stable, high pressure weather conditions, often in the summer or autumn evenings, when a temperature inversion traps radio waves in a warm, dry layer of air, allowing signals to travel for hundreds to thousands of miles. This
Okay,
causes
so
unexpected long distance, high strength signal reception.
yeah, so a temperature inversion layer that goes thousands of miles.
Yeah, a weather system, right? There are weather systems that go for thousands of miles.
A differential medium. It's all you need to have for
No, a
1,000.
temperature inversion layer.
No, it doesn't have to be temperature average. It has to be just a refractive
Well,
index.
that's what he just read. So, like, if you want to bring up something else, I'm not going to go with
High pressure
what's with
systems,
Zanick.
settled anticyclonic weather promotes subsidence, where sinking air warms and creates the inversion layer.
So a temperature inversion layer, hence why it says warm air sinks.
Yeah.
So
And
okay,
remember, they said dry, right? Because like you said, at the higher frequencies, if you have moist air, they're absorbing the RF energy, right? I mean, that's how your
yeah, how
microwave works.
convenient that their explanation incorporates what would be obvious on a flat Earth, which is that the signal is going to travel further in drier conditions because there's less to scatter and attenuate the signal. So it's like, and these numbers get up crazy. So is there no frequency? So is the troposphere temperature inversion layer will block a frequency like infinitely, like up to an infinite frequency in theory. Like,
Well, I mean, it's light, right? So these are photons we're talking about. So
it's not photons that we're talking
photons
about.
passing through a medium.
We're not talking about photons, man. Like
That's what
fairy
radio
tales,
is.
fairy tales, man. But all that aside, whatever. If you want to believe in
The wave
little
that
light
thinks it's a
paintballs,
particle. The wave that
if
thinks
you
it's
want
a
to
particle.
believe in light paintballs, it's cool, man. It's okay, man. Like, I'm not gonna
That's
take away your
interesting.
light paintballs.
When you talk about these
But here,
wavelengths, that are thousands of miles wide. They can't. If you're talking about a photon being a particle or a waveform, that's a good example of it being a wave. Although it
Well,
is a
I have no
particle.
doubt that you want to talk about this, but I really don't. Like,
yeah, we don't have to
okay,
get into the weeds. We don't have to get into the weeds, but I think it's important to note, though, Witsit, that when this stuff happens, like it can sometimes be like, for example, then you get frequency overlap, right? Where a certain region will already have like ownership over that frequency. All of a sudden, this rogue frequency comes into your airspace, and now like kind of interferes with your own frequency, right? So a lot of times these are undesirables, right? It's not always the case that they want to send a signal for thousands of miles. Sometimes all of a sudden this rogue signal comes from 1,000 miles away that shouldn't be there because it's in
because
their
Earth is
airspace,
flat.
right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing is that this is stuff is very intermittent, right? Where we know when we have line of sight, like when the news van pulls that big ass dish and points it up at the hillside, 60 miles away, they get fucking high speed broadcast power, right? Like they have a rock solid signal every single time they do it. They're able to do it when they have line of sight, and you can't have that type of reliability using these atmospheric quirks to send a signal, right? That's why we can't rely on them for sustained high speed communication.
No,
So
we
I
can't
think
rely
that
on
that
them
aspect of it
because
cannot be
there are.
ignored.
No, we can't rely on them because there's so many variables like attenuation and scattering and like a thunderstorm system or any type of obstruction or even like competing signals intercepting it. So that's the actual situation. Like, that's why what in reality you have to do is show the evidence that, there was actually a 2,000-mile band, a 5,000-mile band, 5,000 miles. There was a band a little magic corridor where the temperature's inverted, meaning going beyond what they normally are, for 5,000 miles and trapped the signal. That's a claim.
Well, I don't know where
Can
you
we
got
get the
5,000
evidence?
miles from.
Well, let's look at the. Let's look at. Didn't I just drop it?
But weather systems can be thousands of miles long, right?
So Daza, that's not 50 megahertz low
And you can
frequency.
have weather systems that are like the size of continents.
Oh, wait up, Daza. Literally, it says AR world above 50 megahertz. And if you look at the mode there, it starts at 144 and goes up. Those are only records above 50 megahertz, not low frequencies. But anyway,
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
it's all good. But if you look at the
But look,
troposphere right here,
indisputably
like
though, Witsit, when
it's
we have line
4,000
of
kilometers.
sight, we have a solid signal, right? Like satellite TV works like virtually 24/7.
Wait. Remember my point where you were like, I don't know where you're getting 5,000 miles? Like, okay, let's kilometers, 5,000 kilometers. Can you explain to me how a temperature inversion means it inverts from what it normally is? Okay,
Well,
so
it doesn't imply that it reverses direction. It just means that if density is going down as you go up, it still is going down as you go up, but it might not go down as rapidly because the temperature has gone in a different direction.
Yeah, different direction, inverted. Yeah, so it inverts from what it normally is, and it's gonna stretch over a span of 5,000 kilometers.
That's like
That's
roughly
what
the
you think,
width of the U.S.
right? So when does that happen?
But I mean, look, we have jet streams that are more than a continent wide, right? A narrow
Why are
band
we talking about jet
of high,
streams?
because it's just another type of weather phenomenon that can produce a sustained condition for thousands of
Wait, what?
miles,
Like
right?
extremely high altitudes, which is not where the troposphere is.
It doesn't matter. Look, I'm not a climatologist, like a
Well,
weather
then
person or
don't
whatever,
pretend to be
right?
one.
But it's obvious that like you can get on these continent-sized scales, you can get like weather conditions, right? Like high
Not
pressure
at super
systems.
low altitudes.
You get high pressure systems that affect the entire like eastern half of the U.S., right? Where the entire eastern half of the U.S. either gets crazy rain or crazy heat waves, right?
You think
Like
that's the
No, not
same?
usually. It moves across.
Yeah,
it's
exactly. It's
just
moving. It's
examples of.
moving. So you think that like when we get a rainy storm system that comes into the U.S., like that entire area has a temperature inversion layer?
Well, first, it's not about what he thinks. It's about what the globe model is saying. So it's one needs to learn what the global model is saying, then get the details, do the work, and then present an irrefutable refutation. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks.
It's a decent point.
Yeah, but this is unfortunately you're stuck here because like they're not going to give you that. Right? Like there isn't a place to go get that because I looked for it and this is the way it works. It works the same way the ionosphere worked. Okay, which is I know Earth is a globe, therefore something like this must exist. Okay, we received a signal at this distance, therefore this must have happened. Right. So it isn't like they go out and measure the conditions for 5,000 kilometers and discover that there was a temperature inversion layer. And then they come back with the readings and they say, okay, look, here's the temperature inversion layer. It's very easy to detect. It's in the lowest part of the atmosphere. Like that doesn't happen, bro. Like, for example, there was like a little like fishing boat and they sent a high radio frequency and it went like way further than it's supposed to go. And it hit a little buoy and was received and it like made the news and everything. And they just say it's tropospheric ducting. Like they just say it. And so like to me that doesn't work. And by the way, it's not even they don't even always claim tropospheric ducting. And so by the way, do you guys agree there would be a way to test this? If it's tropospheric ducting, then we could go to an altitude higher than the troposphere and we shouldn't be able to receive that signal, right?
Well, it depends if you have line of sight to it. If you still have line of sight to it and you have the beam width for it, you would pick up the signal, right?
Like what? I thought we don't have line of sight. I thought we were on a globe.
You get up high enough, right? You'd have line of sight, right? If you're 200 miles up,
No,
you have line of sight for
no.
1,000 miles in every direction, right?
Okay, so we're talking about 5,000 kilometers. And how high up did you say?
I said if you're 200 miles up, you would have line of sight for 1,000 miles in every
In what
direction.
world are we shooting these radio frequencies 200 miles up?
Well, you're talking about getting above the troposphere, right?
Okay. We don't shoot
Yeah, I
these
mean, like,
anywhere close to 200 miles up. That's insane, right? We shoot them on the ground, maybe on a mountain, and we receive them thousands of kilometers away. They oftentimes claim the idea of tropospheric ducting, which is the lowest part of the atmosphere, and it supposedly the temperatures invert and it creates this little corridor that traps them. So meaning that the signals are trapped close to the earth and they're bouncing up and down, up and down, up and down in this little corridor that won't let them out. And so in that way, because that corridor is part of the atmosphere and that atmosphere is naturally contouring to the globe, that little hallway is also going around the globe. So as the signal gets trapped in it, it goes along around the globe with it. And so the signal just stays close to the earth, right? It because it's trapped. Meaning if that were true, there's a way to test it. If I were to go above that little corridor, right, I shouldn't be receiving the signal.
quick question for you, Witsit. Whatever method is used for getting these radio waves all those hundreds of miles, it doesn't happen with light, like visible light. So it must be something that is relative to the frequency, like it only works for radio waves, right? Because we never see this happen with light. You can't just like look out one day and, oh, hey, there's Everest over the hill. So what do you think it is that makes it radio wave specific?
The frequency of the light, which radio is light. The shorter the wavelength, the more it'll refract. The longer the wavelength, the less refraction it'll have. So if you were to draw it as a curve, the curve would be it'll be a tighter curve if it's more on the gamma ray end. So to answer your question, this being radio, its rate of refraction will be less than visible light. And that is a variable one has to get to the bottom of investigating all this. Does all of this line up?
Like what I will say here, right? Like, I, of course, a lot of people know this, right? Like, I think that the mainstream interpretation of light is completely wrong. So, whatever. I mean, like, I don't bring it up oftentimes because, admittedly, it's a very like nuanced conversation that turns into a very like in depth one, and it's like admittedly the most confounding phenomena ever, maybe, but when if you start to move over in that direction where you're going to ask me a question that's fundamentally tied to it's tied to the fundamental nature of light. I don't know, man. Like I don't have the same understanding of light as everyone else, right? Like, whatever. I think the light's already there. I think the radio signal's already there. I think that the visible and non-visible light's already there. It's already everywhere. It doesn't travel anywhere. And it's simply being excited into a detectable frequency. So, whatever. But and it has a rate of induction, so it becomes like detectable, perceptible, visible, depending on its frequency at a certain rate, but it isn't actually traveling. It would be like a rope that was stretched super tight, not moving, and then I came and thumped it, and it took a second for the other side to get the reverberation of the thump. But it was, if you asked me how long did it take the rope to get to the other side, I'd be like, well, that's a dumb question. It was already there. It's like how long did it take the rope to vibrate on the other side? But anyway, yeah, radio waves and microwaves have much longer wavelengths. So that's the answer. but this all started kind of right because we're talking about me seeing the sun and like how how could I still think it's flat or whatever. And it's like, this is my answer, right? Like, I didn't just go get memory wiped in Antarctica. Like, I didn't touch down on the ice and someone pulled out like a Men in Black gun, like a Men in Black suits didn't run up there and memory wipe me. In fact, my experience was like everyone on the trip, didn't really like that I was there because I was very clearly not going to just leave there pretending like saying it was a globe. And I made that very clear before I went. I made it clear before I accepted the invitation. I made it clear in the interviews asking me to go. I made it clear in the negotiations of the contract that I wrote. I made it clear the whole time, right? And whatever. So then we went there. We saw it was cool. It was very pretty. I mean, like I was over it after one day. Like I saw the sun wasn't going down, and I wasn't gonna go climb a mountain. So, it was cool. It was a cool experience. But like anyway, to me, it seems wild that like I'm gonna come back to the United States and suddenly forget or pretend it no longer matters that I have this long list of like geometric refutations, things that are much better understood in the sky from my perspective, right? I mean, people love to claim they understand the sky, but they don't. They absolutely do not. Um, so yeah, I know that's not what people want to hear me say. I mean, flat earthers wanted to hear me, I guess, spoon feed an explanation and pretend I do know how the sky works. A lot of them, and then
Did you did you actually come to any understanding or explanation of the counter rotating sun circles that you saw?
I mean, like, not like a definitive one or anything, right? But like the two at the top of the list for me probably is what does kind of make a lot of intuitive sense in many ways, but does have issues is like just electromagnetic field has 2 points of rotation. Um, and so this idea that you have kind of like the straight area in between the 2 points of counter rotations, which is just a very common phenomena of electromagnetism and like the phenomena that makes the whole realm work, right? So like it would kind of make perfect sense that the sky operates that way. Like if we were able to incorporate observations into an electromagnetic field, I would be stoked because it would make everything make sense. Um, so, I've entertained that a bit, where like when you look up at the equator and you see this like straight line and then you see stars moving one way and then the other way on both sides of it, that you're literally seeing what's actually happening. And yeah, I mean that's interesting. And then the other one would be like dome optics. And I would admit that would be pretty wild, but does still make sense. Like I said earlier, if you're walking over a ball and then as you get to the equator, you're just basically curving down. If you were walking over a plane inside of a dome, like if you're looking up at that dome and you're walking underneath it, as you walk out towards the edge, it's curving down. And so if there were layers of a curved dome that I'm looking at with my eyeballs, is it possible that the phenomenon in the sky is going to like compress down, compress and curve down, and then if I looked at the sky, not knowing that, could I like even in good faith, right? Like transpose that onto the ground? I would say, yeah. Like what that would mean is when you get out to the edge, it would mean kind of like if the sun's moving and it gets out to the edge, then it creates kind of like a personalized sun, and that just is apparent and moves. Like the reason that I was like, I didn't just jump on boards like the dome optics explanation and whatever variation of it that was proposed.
The edge of
What
what?
it flipped upside down, right? Like I was the one really pushing that we had to make sure we got a good observation of the sunspots. And I was like, actually had to remind a bunch of people and I would really press the issue. And the sunspots were upside down.
So that sun that you saw there, it relates to the ground somehow that you were standing on, right?
Not really, other than it warms it up, right? Like, I mean, it excludes certain model claims, but it's independent of physical measurements of the ground.
So it's not over the Tropic of Capricorn. It wasn't. The sun you saw wasn't over the Tropic of Capricorn?
I mean, that's like a tricky question, right? The sun I saw, am I seeing the same sun as them? Because there's only one sun, but it just has an apparent position relative to me. Then the answer would technically be yes and somewhat be no. Or would it be a different sun? I don't know.
So you're kind of with the flat earthers who don't believe that exists or that you even went there almost, even though you went there. You don't really
What?
have
How?
you don't have an understanding of it at all.
That's right. Do you have an understanding? Wait, can you, genuine question, like, can you explain to me how it makes sense to arbitrarily select certain parts of the sky that you have to have a full understanding of, and like other parts you can't understand at all, but one makes like is like make or break, and then the rest are not? Because I really can't, like, I don't understand the like logical consistency of that. Like, what I guess what I'm saying is like, why do I need to understand the sun, right? And if that's a requirement to substantiate any other claims, like, is the earth curving, then like, could I not ask you how you explain a bunch of other things in the sky?
Well, you'd be happy to use the sun in the north, wouldn't you?
Wait, so I mean, the short
I would
answer
use the
is
sun I would use the sun
As
wherever I
something
went,
consistent,
like,
you would use it, wouldn't you?
what do you mean use it?
Well, use it for whatever means you want. I mean, it's not an illusion, is it? Is the sun in the north an illusion as well?
I very well believe that the sun could be in a apparent position for everyone that sees it everywhere. Yeah.
Because it seems like you were on. That's the kind of the front line. It seems. I mean, you've just been talking a load of stuff about microwaves that nobody can seemingly prove or come to a definitive on one side or the other. Before you went to Antarctica, look where they were saying that didn't exist. It wasn't a 24-hour sun. So, you have been privileged to go to the front line and see something, and we all consider that observation. And before that, there was only one sun. Now it seems like there's two suns, or a reflection of a sun, but that sun you saw has a GP, right?
The short answer of Witsit is like you.
So when you're at 79 degrees south, hang on. When you're at 79 degrees south, the sun was above your head for 24 hours. You were looking south at the sun in the south. Where would you expect the GP of the sun to be?
Over there underneath it.
Well, yeah, what in unknown lands or
what? No, what? Like, you act like I shifted my position.
Right? The sun has a
like,
GP, right?
Yes, the apparent sun, yeah.
And you were at the edge of flat Earth, the outward distance of flat Earth that's known so far by you, and you viewed the sun looking south. The sun was in the south. And where was the GP of the sun be? Does that relate to somewhere on the Earth that we know, or does that relate to a place we don't know?
But what? Like, I don't know what the sun is exactly. So I mean, I don't know what you're lost about. Do not interrupt me within 3 words.
I'm not lost.
I'm not
don't
sure.
Tell me
I'm not sure.
Don't do that. Don't do that, Witsit.
Well,
don't
you
do
just
that,
were
right?
really long.
It's not a debate. It's not. I'm just asking you some questions because you were
It doesn't need to be a debate
right?
for you to not interrupt me.
Yeah, but that's what you do, and I told you that when you play that game, I don't accept that.
What?
Right?
Not interrupt
conversation.
What the fuck, dude?
Right?
Asking you not to interrupt me is a game.
Does the sun have a GP in the south?
Oh my god.
This dude sucks.
I answered it. I answered that 3 times. I said yes.
Well, that would correspond to the almanac, would it not?
With the what?
The almanac would tell you what the GP of the sun would be, wouldn't it?
We do have an almanac, yeah.
And that doesn't work in the south where you saw the sun. That almanac doesn't relate to that sun you saw.
Bro, what is your point? What is your point?
I said, well, the point is, what would the GP of the sun be?
Okay, let me explain. Let me explain it like
hang
this.
on a sec.
No,
Because
so
when
you're
I've
not
asked
trying to
you,
talk to me. You're just trying to repeat your point over and over.
no, I'm just, well, you might think that. But up till now, you're the only person that, apart from Jaren, that I could ask about that. And all the other flat earthers,
Okay,
they say
so
you
then
just
why
turn
wouldn't you let me
around.
speak?
Hang on. Oh, you can speak. You speak all the time. You have the power to speak. You have the power to mute me. You got all sorts of power that I don't have. All right.
But you're pretending that you're
All
like
the other people
wanting
I
to
asked
speak to
about it.
me, and then you're not talking to me. So it's weird.
Well, I'm just telling you what I'm saying. Up to this point, and still
There's an
now, if I ask
almanac. The
people
sun has
about
a
the sun,
GP. You went to the south. You saw the sun south of you at 79 degrees. Does it have a GP? Are you going to say it again?
does it have a GP?
Yes.
And where would the almanac say that is?
Over there underneath it.
Well, where would that be, though, in relation to you?
Holy shit, dude. Why would he know that off the top of his head?
Bro,
Because
you
the
mean like
almanac would have a position for it.
Okay, I don't have an almanac in my hand. But
But
over
that
there.
would be the Tropic of Capricorn, would it not?
On a
Somewhere.
flat Earth? Sure. Like what, dude?
Okay. Okay, so technically,
Are
that
you
sun
seriously
you're looking
building
at,
up to say the whole how could the sun be over Australia and over you at the same time on a flat earth?
I'm not claiming it is, I'm just asking you what you think.
No, I'm
Is
saying like
it?
that's what your question is.
Is the sun over Australia or not?
Well, yeah, okay.
Oh my god.
The Australia has a sun over them that they see, right? An apparent sun. So we have a couple options. I answered it in good faith, right? And I said, I don't really know. But the two top answers for me is either the sun is in an apparent location relative to the observer, and that we have something to do with dome optics playing a role. And this is since it's actually curving down as you go outward, you could logically assume that you're tipping over instead of the sky tipping over. Or you could look at another possibility of like an electromagnetic field, because like to me, what that changed significantly for me is it significantly changed my opinion on the viability or possibility of like an actual two pole system. Right. And so that's
Is that
it.
your
Like
position now, the two-pole flat Earth model? Is that where you've moved to?
I don't know how much clearer I can make it, right? Like, I'm not claiming a model. I didn't claim a model before we went, and I haven't claimed a model in 8 years since I've talked about this, because to me, it would be insane to think that we have a model.
Yeah,
You
but
think you have a
words are
model.
pictures,
You
right?
think you have
Words
a
are
model.
pictures.
You think you have a model. You don't.
I don't have a
You
model.
don't have a model.
I don't think I have a
I know.
model.
So why do I need
Right.
one?
Well, I mean,
Because your words make pictures. So far, you've been painting a picture for everybody.
Well, wait.
You
Why
never
do I need a
yet.
model, but you don't
Now
need a
you're
model?
painting it. Now you're painting it as an illusion.
What? No, I didn't say that. It could be, and it could actually be where
It could
we
be.
saw
It's
it. And it could be a two.
speculation.
Yeah, duh.
Right.
Because it's something in the sky I can't verify.
The
Like,
sun does have
can
a
you?
GP.
But
It
if the
has a
sun's an
position.
illusion, it's
Are you
only in the
like a
south.
robot?
Yeah,
I
well,
just answered that question as well. I said
the two-pole
no. I
flat
think that
earthers.
even in the north, it's an apparent position relative to the observer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think a better
but of course,
question would be
you
in
were
your
looking
guys'
north
world,
when
you
you're
think
looking
that
south,
too,
right?
right? Like you think the sun's not actually there when we see it all the time.
Well, I know it's
But
going
that's
in different
okay.
directions.
No.
Where I
What?
am,
You think
it
that the
goes from left
sun's
to
not
right.
there
And where
when we
you
see
were
it?
in the Antarctica, it was going right to left.
Yeah, okay. So that isn't even the hard part of this scenario for me. Okay. Like I was the one that brought you guys, and this is my opinion, whatever, like humbly. To me, the fact that the sun stayed up for 24 hours wasn't even the biggest piece of evidence for the globe on that trip. It was that it did that while the sunspots were inverted. Okay. That's very interesting, right? So like any claim of an apparent position or like something like that has to incorporate an inversion, right? Now, this is why I keep on trying to articulate this idea in my mind to you of if I was walking underneath a dome and this dome is curving down, right? you can see where you could mistake that as you were walking on a ground curving down over a sky that was just basically quote unquote flat, just like sitting still, right? Like you think you're tipping, but the actual sky is tipping. So then when you get all the way out to the edge of that, it would tip, 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 flip. Okay. So I'm not saying that is what's happening. I'm just saying, like, you're basically what you just came in here and said is just a bunch of microwaves and stuff that nobody can figure out. What do you mean? Dude, we can figure out the microwaves way more than we can figure
I'm
out
asking
stuff
you about this.
in the sky.
Well, it's one of those conversations you've had for a long time that doesn't have any resolution, like gravity
Okay.
or pressure.
Do you know what gravity is?
Backwards and forwards. But
Do you know what gravity is?
You physically saw a sun.
Do you know what
when
gravity
you,
is?
in Antarctica, and it went from right to left.
Do you know what the sun is?
Not specifically, no.
So why are you asking me?
Because I thought that where you were, that the sun would have a GP. Wherever you saw it.
Okay, but you're asking me
would
what
have
it
a
is and
GP
how
that
it
relates
works.
to the almanac.
But you're not just asking me about if it has a GP. You're asking me what it is and how it works.
And you're older, Elder Bear. You're older
than understanding. I'm not. You know, I'm just listening to what you have to say about it. That's all.
Yeah, dude, you're older than Witsit, so you lived longer, so
when
you
I
should
spoke,
know.
hang on.
What
When
the
I
sun is.
spoke to,
all right, just talk over everyone, Elder Bear. Good job.
I'm not talking to you. I was talking to Witsit.
Yeah, you
I wasn't
suck.
talking to you. I was talking to Witsit. Fuck you.
You're fucking
You
awful,
suck
bro.
too. Yeah, I know I'm awful. I'm always awful whenever I speak to anybody. Terrible. And when I spoke to the two whole flat Earth guys, they said that when you were looking south, or when you would have been looking south when you were, and you saw the sun, you're actually looking north. Do you think that?
Okay. No.
Right, okay. So that was their position. Then there are other flat earthers who say,
I don't care what other people say.
Right? Yeah. And Witsit's one of those people who's just say. You're one of those people.
Okay. Do you know
just
what
say.
north and south is?
You're
How do we
crushing.
determine north and south?
You're crushing right now. Keep it up.
How do we determine what north and south is?
You just say.
Elder Bear, how do we determine what north and south
your
is?
experience and what you got from it. That's all.
Cool. Okay. So you're asking me about north and south. How do we determine what that is?
I didn't ask you about north and south, did I?
You literally just did.
Well, you were at 79 degrees south. At some point,
Okay,
you
there
were
we are. You're saying south again.
Yep, that's
what is
right.
South? What is south?
What was east then when you were doing that? Where was east
what is
and
east?
west?
Bro, what is east, west, north, and south?
It's a cardinal direction. It's a cardinal
Elder Bear,
direction.
what are how do we know what those are?
They're cardinal directions. We know they're cardinal directions.
Okay, how do we determine cardinal directions?
Well, that's what they've always been: north, south, east, and west.
That's what they've always been. How do we determine them?
Sun rises in the east, sets in the west, exactly on the equinox, and
so we're just
that doesn't answer the question though.
But like we're trying to figure out how we determine them, and you're telling me like an observation based on assuming them. So like,
yeah, you guys.
How do we determine them?
Well, you know, it takes you into your east-west circles.
Holy shit!
How do we determine them?
Wow.
Well, you're going to use a compass, right?
Okay. So we're going to use a compass. How's a compass work? How does a compass work to help us know what directions are?
Well, that's where you get a circle and you start painting pictures about the shape of the Earth.
Bro, what?
You would be a lot better off not assuming what I'm saying and just like answering
well, you're
the
going to
simple
go.
questions.
Your east and west goes in the circle, right?
So does yours, dude. Like, just answer the question.
Yeah, and that's where the sun follows that path, doesn't it? On that circle.
Dude, can you answer? Hey, do you not even get the point I'm trying to make? Clearly you don't, right? But tell me, how does the compass work? Because you're invoking these cardinal directions as though they are gospel. And so I'm saying, okay, there must be a very definitive... You cannot have a conversation, brother. Dude,
all right. It's a little point that's floating in some liquid that's supposedly is weighted at one end to make it float in the water, in the liquid. Otherwise, it wouldn't be floating, right? be pointing down on the north end.
Okay, so they align based on the needle aligns based on the magnetic field lines, right?
Points to some magnetic place, apparently.
Okay, so if we
That's not the
start
North
with the
Pole, is it?
assumption that we have to start with the assumption the Earth's a globe with a magnetic field with a north and a south, and then we know those locations, and then we know how the compass interacts with those locations, and then we know what the needle points to based on that location and the magnetic field lines within it, and where we're approaching relative to that. And then conveniently, as we go out towards one of these poles, we claim that the geographic and the magnetic North Pole are separated by hundreds and hundreds of miles. And so as I start to get closer and closer to where we were, right, the compass is no longer correct. And they claim conveniently where we were at that the magnetic pole was on the other side of the geographic pole. So it'll still point towards the geographic pole because it's actually pointing to the magnetic pole beyond that. Okay. Do you see some problems here? Right? Like, okay, that's a
I'm
claim.
thinking
I
about
don't
your
know.
magnetic field where you were in Antarctica. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, but do you
So
realize
that
that the
was a
magnetic field isn't
circular thing, was it? Is it a circular field or?
well, this is what you're claiming, right? Like
I'm
you
not
keep
claiming
invoking the
anything. I haven't
directional.
made a claim, Witsit. I never made a claim.
Yeah,
I'm only
you
asking you
did.
questions about your experience, and you want to go somewhere else now.
No, you told me that I was
Your experience
79
is the
degrees
only person
south.
I can talk to about it, right?
You told me I was
I
79
accept
degrees
you went
south.
there, which is unusual because most
Bro,
people don't
you're just
accept. Well, a lot of people don't.
Dude, will you let him
Claire,
answer?
you are so rude, man. Stop interrupting.
You got this, dude. Keep crushing it.
Yeah.
Right?
okay. So